Jake.
No.
I don't think, I'm not really comfortable with this wardrobe today. I'll tell you why. There is no 1980s pop culture reference. There is no video game logo. It's just a basic ass grey shirt.
Just a shirt.
Now listen, I'm fucking pissed off about it, to be honest with you, because I really, every single fortnight, I live for your fit. I'm like, what's he got coming up next? Like, what obscure little reference can he throw onto a t-shirt this week? And now all we got is this weird staticky, is that static or is that lint or what is that?
It's just like a little fabric, like a little pattern. I don't know.
Yeah, right.
What do you call that?
Not a fan, man.
Yeah.
Not a fan.
It's a good well-fitting shirt, though.
Yeah, thank you. I'm in shape now. Thank you, Lucy. Thanks for noticing. This shirt fits
Stop trying to make him feel better. I'm trying to shame him for his wardrobe, okay?
Every so often I need to like dress like a little bit of an adult. I call all the graphic tees like my work uniform.
Sure.
Like I'll just always wear.
You got to wear regular civilian clothes from time to time.
I know. I just got this new one though. It's got Hitman contracts on it, like really big, and it's got Hitman like that. Like it's so cool. I should have wore that, but hey.
That's definitely very sexy.
I mean, out of all of us, look, we're not exactly the most colorful shirt wearers. Like we're all wearing some kind of gray or black shirt.
I'm wearing activewear. My Lululemon baby, let's go.
Wow.
Look at him, plays tennis, becomes a Lululemon boy.
Lululemon guy. Wow.
That's right. I'm a Lululemon guy now.
I realized
that's
that
wild.
I'm wearing a health shirt, as I always am. And I was like, that can't just be like, I can't just, I mean, I have like 5, but like I have to have other shirts. So that's why I put on this flattering gray hoodie.
I can only wear black t-shirts. I know that a lot of times I have logos on them, but like I can only ever wear black t-shirts. And I've tried so hard to like branch out and like express myself and dress differently, but I just, it's like a mental health thing or something. I don't know. I just can't do it.
I get it. 100%.
Have you done like color theory?
What?
Color theory about colors that look really good on your skin tone and whatever. So like I, for example, know that I can't wear pastels because I am so pale, it just doesn't look good on me. But if you put me in a blue, I look fantastic. Blue for some reason do great. So maybe get your colors done.
I'll try blue.
Because you've got blue eyes.
You just said specifically you're only going to wear black all the time.
I can branch out to dark blue.
To be fair, that is actually exactly my repertoire. It is dark blue and black. That's it, baby.
It's
I do have like 1 or 2 white t-shirts that I wear underneath jumpers, underneath like hoodies or whatever.
Yeah, same. Yeah, that's it.
I bought like when I was in Japan, I went to Uniqlo and they have all these like licensed shit. Like they have Star Wars shirts and Marvels, and they got some goods. I bought like a white Star Wars shirt with like the original like poster on the back of it, like the original, with Luke with the whatever. That was pretty cool.
You didn't get the Grogu one, the Baby Yoda one?
No.
Can I go on a rant about that guy? I hate this guy.
Please go on. Let's hear it.
I have such a problem with Baby Yoda. I hope they kill him. I hope he dies.
Wait, why?
Why? Is it because it's too obvious like a play?
Yeah, it's too much, man. And also, so do you guys see a lot of, I don't know if you have them in Australia, but like the blow up big inflatable yard ornaments. So
no, like the ones like the giant like skeletons for Halloween or whatever.
Yeah, or like a big inflatable snowman for Christmas or something like that.
Yeah, we have some of that. Sure.
So people do the Baby Yoda ones, and it drives me insane because they put he's like a minion. They put him in every holiday. I'll literally drive through my neighborhood and I'll be like, oh, Happy Hanukkah, Baby Yoda. Happy Halloween from Baby Yoda. Like it's so stupid.
Happy Hanukkah from Baby Yoda is actually peak though. To be perfectly honest, like that is sick.
Yeah,
I love it.
Oh. Well, hi everyone. Welcome to a video game podcast. Baby Yoda says, "Play more video games." Oh
no.
He doesn't say anything.
Not.
He's gonna say something in the next season or the next movie or whatever.
Oh,
is it done? Like, isn't that all wrapped up? By the way, is the
Mandalorian
Mandalorian still going?
They're like, this is our cash cow. We need to make a movie.
Isn't Sigourney Weaver in it? In the movie? I think she got cast.
Maybe.
God,
that's the alien lady. She can't be in that. No. That's illegal.
Crossover.
Crossover episode. But no, we are here. Welcome to another episode of the Friends Per Second podcast. I'm Lucy. He's Ralph. He's Jake. We have a packed show today, boys. It was so packed that we even had to like cut stuff and put it in next episode. But we have Jess Cogswell from Gamespot here to talk with us about Metaphor ReFantazio?
Fantazio.
Yeah.
That's right, with the hands and everything.
Metaphor.
That's right.
Metaphor.
Beautiful.
Ralph, you're going to talk to Shawn Layden, ex-PlayStation exec, which I am very intrigued to hear all about.
Yeah.
And we also have obviously what we've been playing and our show and tell, which are things that are not video games. But Ralph, you just mentioned Japan there.
Yeah.
How was Tokyo Game Show?
It was good. So I was there. It's my very first time at Tokyo Game Show. I have always wanted to go because it's like the closest thing that we have to Australia other than PAX. You know, we do have a PAX here. In fact, PAX was just this past weekend. I didn't get to make it there, but yeah. Tokyo Game Show is, first of all, calling it Tokyo Game Show is kind of bullshit because it's not in Tokyo. It's in a place called Chiba. And that means you have to catch a train for like an hour and a half out of Tokyo to get to this place. Yeah. So it's like some really dodgy kind of like misnaming of it to like lure you in or whatever. But
it's like New York Comic-Con being in Pennsylvania.
Yes, exactly. Right. So, but no, did make it out there. It is actually a 4-day show, and two of the first 2 days are for business only, and then the final 2 days are for consumers as well. And that's actually quite common for events. What you usually find though is that on those business only days, it's like really empty. There's not much going on. There's not many people around. It's quiet, right? And that's in the case of like the old E3 and Gamescom and a bunch of other events. Okay. Tokyo Game Show, though, the business days were fucking packed, man. Like, they were just heaving. And I was looking around and I was like, there is no way in hell every single person in this room works in video games. Absolutely not. Impossible. But that was what apparently was. So those 2 days were still really busy. Apparently, the consumer days were just insane. There's a total of 300,000 people visited the show, which I actually think is which I actually think is similar to Gamescom.
Yeah, Gamescom.
But the size of the event is way smaller. Like it's still got like a few halls, but there's not like that much more real estate. Like, sorry, there's a lot less real estate than there is in Gamescom. And yeah, in terms of like what's there, you know, companies definitely go all out. Some of the booths that were on display were really impressive, and they hired dancers and they built like giant statues and whatever else. And it was actually really cool. If you're watching the YouTube video, I'll give Stu some footage that I recorded on the show floor to play while we're talking. But it's a really like heaving, pumping event that's just really fun. I would have thought that it would just be like a lot of mobile games. And I think that's the word on the street when it comes to Tokyo Game Show. They're like, it's not really that. But that's not quite true. Like there's a lot of core games there as well. Like there's a lot of stuff that we play represented there. You know, Sega in particular had a massive booth. The Warframe community team were there showing off Warframe 1999. They had a booth. Konami were going all out promoting both Silent Hill and Metal Gear. Huge booths. PlayStation was there with a massive presence, and they had like a show. Like I actually saw the 30th anniversary PS5 Pro, which is unbelievably sexy, and it's just a crime that it's as expensive as it is. Yeah, so like, you know, no booth from Nintendo and no booth from Xbox as I recall. Could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure that's not the case. But absolutely no shortage of like the core games that we play. This is definitely not just mobile games and pachinko machines. In fact, I didn't see any pachinko machines on the floor at all, so that's also not true what people say about it. But yeah, they also have an entire hall dedicated to indies, or an entire space devoted to that, and that's always a real highlight. And yeah, so I think it's really worth visiting if you don't usually go to events. You know, if you're someone that like, you know, lives in Japan, obviously, or wants to make a trip from Australia to Japan for it, I absolutely think it's worth it. For us as like games press, games media, content creators, whatever, it's not as essential because it's not really as focused on hands-on opportunities and coverage as like Gamescom is. And in fact, a lot of what was at Tokyo Game Show was actually already at Gamescom, you know, the month prior. So from a coverage perspective, it's not as central, but it's still a really cool event.
For attendees, like for people, just the general public, what is there to do? Like, are there like waiting on long lines to like play games?
There's a
like,
lot of lines to play games. Yeah, like that's it. And you know, if you want to line up for an hour to play Sonic Generations, X Generations, you can do that. I've never really gone in on that stuff anyway. Like I've always just been happy to like wait until the game is out, you know. But if you want to play games early, you can absolutely do that. They do have a stage or various stages where they do like, you know, cosplay competitions, and they had the thing obviously with Kojima, how he did a Death Stranding presentation where he just showed off his like cam girl thing that he built into his own video game. So like there's cool stuff like that. And I actually think Kojima's presentation was kind of like the high point of the show in terms of like their calendar of events, in terms of like big developers who are there to talk about their games. They didn't have much else outside of that, as I understand. So to go there is really just to soak up the vibes. It's to play games early. It's to buy merch. There's a lot of merch there.
Oh,
which is really
talk to me. What are we talking?
Yeah, I mean, like you should see just the Kojima Productions merch booth is so unbelievably sick. It has the coolest shit you could possibly imagine.
What was that, like $1,000 jacket that I was like...
All of that. And like these sunglasses and just like so much stuff. If you wanted to spend $5,000 or $6,000 on merch there, you could easily do it. God. And I absolutely, if I was like a ballin' billionaire, I would 100% do that. I ended up buying like one Bridges t-shirt, which even then that was ridiculously overpriced. It was like 80 Australian dollars or whatever for a t-shirt. But I was like, whatever, man, I don't care. I'm here, I'm going to enjoy myself. But yeah, a lot of the merch booths are pretty crazy with the amount of stuff they offer. And it's actually a really nice highlight. Like if you want to go and buy cool video game shit, it's nice.
You mentioned the indie area. Is it like a specifically Japanese indie scene, or is it international?
It's a mix. Yeah, I met quite a few international developers when I was there, like indie developers, I mean. So yeah, absolutely a mix. And I didn't really converse as much with the Japanese indie games because like their signs are in Japanese, and you know, I don't know what they are. You know, if I see a sign for like some little, I don't know, a game in English that looks familiar to me, I'm like, yeah, cool, I understand what that is. You know. So yeah, but it's definitely a mix. And I met quite a few indie developers like came up to me and were like, "Hey man, whatever." I'm like, "Hey, cool." And I checked out their games and it was a good time. So
I felt like a lot of people were there this year, like especially coming from the West. It, like you said, coverage opportunities. It's for Western press. It's like it's not really the show for that, especially because now most of the publishers will have hey, if we're showing something at Tokyo Game Show, we will have it over here so you don't have to go all the way to Tokyo. But this year, more than any year, I felt like so many people on my feed were there. And I wasn't jealous at all.
It's I tell you what, we should go next year. The challenge is it's September. And for us doing what we do with like the review season, like September is like peak period, September, October.
Yeah.
So it is hard to get that time away, but
Bants though.
It's worth it.
I would have gone this year if one of my best friends wasn't getting stupid married. It was a beautiful wedding. It was beautiful.
That's very nice. So just in case they're listening,
I think she will.
But I really do think, it is worth going and experiencing it. I think it is a great event that I had a lot of fun at, and yeah, as long as you don't mind just chilling out, soaking up vibes, you know, like meeting cool people. Again, it's not about like,
and it's in Japan.
It's not about breaking big news and like going hands on first with whatever. Like it's just there to like hang out and play fun games with and meet cool people.
Yeah.
And for that, I'm really thankful. And also, it's nice because it's like only 9 hours from to get there from Australia, as opposed to 30 hours to get to Gamescom.
I'm happy for you. I'm glad you got
I'll take
one.
the 9 hours. Yeah. I'll take that.
I think it's 14 from West Coast.
Okay, that's a proper flight.
Yeah, but I mean,
but it's still.
Ralph, have you ever been to Day of the Devs? Jake, have you been to Day of the Devs?
Once.
Never been.
A long time ago.
Only seen the streams and stuff, but never actually been.
That is another good vibe show that I would recommend to folks at home if you're in the San Francisco Bay Area. Because again, it's just like so many indie devs, people just chilling, hanging out. They got a little bar going. You can walk around with a little beer and just play some awesome games and just soak up the vibes, which I'm excited to do again. But no, I really want to go back to Japan.
Hell yeah, absolutely.
I want to go for once for the first time.
I can't believe you.
Can
you
we be there?
Nerd.
Can we show you around?
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
what I'm saying. We should go there and we should hassle Kojima and we should go and get scanned by him.
Knock on his front door and be like, "Let me in."
That's right.
Let me in.
And we would do this when we're like, "Scan me, scan me," and then the door opens. No, like smoke in the hallway. No, there's not even a voice. You just have to walk through and you just get
Palace.
scanned. That's exactly it. Like Jabba's palace. That is the plan.
I have a picture with. I have a couple pictures with Kojima, but I want one in the white lobby next to Ludus. I want that one.
That's for famous people, though. You have to be famous.
No, not necessarily.
No.
No.
I've seen some less famous people get it. So like maybe we're less famous enough, Jake. You never know.
I think we could do it.
I think we could be less famous enough. You never know.
I think we could get that picture.
If any of the Kojima production staff are watching, please
hit us up. You know where to find us.
We're not joking. We're not joking about any of this.
No, it's not a joke.
We
not
will
even
fly
in
to
the
Japan
slightest.
just for the photo.
We will fly to Japan. I will fly to Japan for that photo. I'm not even fucking around. So yeah.
I just think it would be cool. Also, I could be near, like you see that wall, and like I just want to see that whole wall and like see all who's on there.
Oh yeah, the wall, the autograph wall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Other than Trent and Atticus, who I already know are on there.
T. Chalamet. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Chalamet, that's right.
He's gonna be a good Bob Dylan. I'm pretty hyped about that. That movie looks good. Anyway, what are we talking about?
Oh, I haven't seen the trailer.
Video games, apparently.
Video games. Well, that was your TGS recap. I almost said TGA recap because it is coming up to that season. But before we get into a bunch of metaphor chat, Ralph, do you want to tee up this next little section?
Yeah, so Shawn Layden, he's actually someone we've been trying to connect with for a while now, and luckily we got an introduction to him through Gamescom Asia. So Gamescom is an event we know of in Germany. It's huge. It happens over there, but they also have sister events that happen in other geographies, and the one that's coming up soon is in Singapore, basically. So he's a keynote speaker there, and he's going to be speaking about like industry and what's going on and whatever else. And then they reached out to us and they're like, "Hey, would you like to talk to Shawn Layden about this stuff as well?" And we're like, "Well, yeah, we've been trying to chat with him for a bit, so that'll be kind of cool." And so, yeah, this is my chat, I should say, with Shawn Layden. The guys aren't joining me because of time zone reasons. They're like asleep when I'm chatting with him. But this is it. So first of all, Shawn, thank you so much for making the time. As I said, we met very briefly at a bar a few years back, so it's nice to actually sit down properly and have a proper chat.
So many stories begin that way.
Exactly right. But obviously everyone knows you from your career, obviously with PlayStation, whatever else. I'm curious though, post that, tell us what you've been up to in the years following your departure from Sony and PlayStation.
Okay, well, thank you, Ralph, and thanks for having me on your pod. I left Sony and PlayStation at the end of 2019, following a 32-year career in Sony. It's a long time to be in one company, and kind of on the precipice of the launch of PlayStation 5, and launching platforms that I've done 7 times at least. It's a certain song and dance. It's extremely exhausting, and frankly, I don't know if I was going to learn anything more from launching one more console. So it seemed like a good time to step out in the world and see what else is going on. And it turned out what was going on was called coronavirus. And so my retirement went straight into lockdown. So I had a much longer sabbatical from working than I had intended to. And I've come back into it and decided, instead of doing another big corporate type of gig, I've been working with advisories to some larger companies on limited time basis, some project based. I had a deal with Tencent for a while, worked with them for a while. Streamline Media Group, I did some advisory for them. And now I'm kind of settled down into, I've got 2 startups that I'm working with closely. None of them, they're game adjacent, but they're not in game development per se.
Okay.
And I'm on the board of a nonprofit called Girls Make Games, which is very near and dear to my heart, because we may talk about it later, but we need to get more people into the making of games.
Yeah, right. Interesting. And so you're now in Singapore?
Gamescom Asia.
Gamescom Asia. So tell us, what is that event? Because we hear about Gamescom Germany. What's the deal with Gamescom Asia?
So it is franchised or owner operated by the people at Colm Messe who do Gamescom, and I think they have one in Latin America now as well. And this is their second year, I believe, in Asia. to try to bring that experience here. That experience, as we know what E3 is, we know what Tokyo Game Show is, we know what all those things are. Gamescom has been pretty good, in my experience, of trying to create an event which can satisfy both commercial business needs as well as consumer needs. So the last couple of days have been business days here. I've had good meetings with other developers and companies involved in the markets here. And from today, the consumer show opens up.
Yeah, right.
So we can see how that goes.
Yeah. So we don't really hear much about like the Southeast Asian gaming market, you know, because we hear about obviously Japan all the time, Western market. We hear more and more about Chinese gaming market, especially in the last sort of like 2 to 3 years. What are the overall dynamics of the Southeast Asian gaming market? Like, what's it like? The
one word to describe it is new. It's very up and coming. It's extremely vibrant. You know, walking around to the booths of different companies that are showing the games they're working on or the services they're providing has a real kind of GDC 2002 kind of feel to it, or E3 2002. It's about 20 years ago. There's that same kind of buzz around what is possible, what can we do? All these new people coming in, trying to get their game off the ground. That's that kind of energy here. Compared to some other shows you may go today in the West, where we're agonizing, rightly so, about staff layoffs in development and some of the fiscal constraints on getting your game done, and the difficulty of getting funding if you're an independent through the VC market or the IB market. Here in Asia, it's all optimism. Everything is possible. The positive vibe, you can really feel it here. People are all into getting themselves a leg up into the video game industry. At the same time, the market is growing. There's definitely economic opportunity to sell your games into these markets, whether that be console, mobile, or PC. I just say it's just filled with possibility.
Yeah, right.
I think it's very cool.
Is it very heavily leveraged into mobile? Is that like the main way that people in that region play, or is it sort of a bit of a mix?
It's a mix. Mobile is I think the lower bar of entry into making mobile games. Smaller footprints, smaller teams. If you can manage to get through the different mobile digital stores to get your game slotted, you'll be fine. Console has a couple more hurdles to that. And if you want to go on Steam with your PC games, that's maybe also an easier road of entry, but it requires just easily enough, just a bigger game, right? But again, everyone's here trying to find a way to get their stories done, and I'm really delighted to see the variety of content that's out there. There's a lot of anime stuff, because you're not going for photorealism, you're just going for the fun of it. There's a lot of things which you look at traditional gaming, a lot of space-based, theme-based games, or RPG type of stuff. But it's just it may be some things you've seen before, but it just has a different spin on it, a different take on it. And I'm excited about that.
Yeah. I think you sort of touched on those sorts of themes in your fireside chat that you had at Gamescom, which has actually been covered quite extensively since then, as many of your comments are regularly covered. I was curious with regards to one quote. You were actually speaking to VGC about this, and you said, and it's a topic you've spoken about in the past. You said, quote, "It's time for a real hard reset on the business model, a hard reset on what it is to be a video game." And I think, again, you've spoken about rising development costs. You've spoken about trend chasing. You've spoken about, the industry just being less innovative and creative than it was in the past. And I'm really interested to explore what you see as an alternative to that model, because I think many people would agree with you that those are definitely some prevailing trends. But what do you think is the pivot that the industry could practically make to address those issues?
Well, the industry is not a monolith, and we can speak about different aspects of it, but it doesn't move as a unit. So it's hard to say what the industry and the overall should do. But I was just trying to point out some of the red flags, some of the dangers on the horizon, if you will. On the one hand, in the console space, it's the rising cost of creating AAA content. Triple-digit millions. That's a heady brew, and there's not a lot of risk tolerance when you're spending that much money to get your game out the door. In other areas, it's just about discoverability. There's something not only quaint, but something that was super useful about having brick and mortar. We could go into like a GameStop.
Definitely, for sure.
And say, I'm really done with my soccer game. Can you point me somewhere else? And have knowledgeable experts in the field to like a sommelier. It's like, what kind of flavor is Sir looking for? And let's see
I used to have that exact job, not sommelier, working in GameStop. So yeah.
Right. And so now we don't have that as much. And discovery in a digital store, talk about needle in a haystack. I think that's a huge challenge for young teams trying to get their games out, either self-published or with even some publisher support. If they can't get you into the carousel in some of these digital stores, it's really difficult for people to find your stuff. So I think the business model has to change in the way that just the economics, the finances around that, we need to relook at that. This whole 70-30 idea that no one acted on, but just became de facto in the industry.
Interesting.
Is that really the proper split? Is the developer getting value for the 30 points they're giving away? It used to make sense when the 30 points would maybe cover stamping of a compact disc and putting it in a case and driving it to a store. If it's just slotting in a digital store, I mean, Epic has taken that to task, right? Tim Sweeney and the guys are saying maybe it's 14 points or maybe it's 15 points. So that has to change. And also, again, we're going back to how do you get seen? How do you get discovered? We've got to find more ways to open up those opportunities.
Yeah. I speak to quite a few indie developers, and especially this past year, and some AAA developers as well. In fact, one of the things I've heard consistently is that the deals that they're being presented to get their games made and published, the deal terms are like practically impossible. It's almost impossible to say yes to them. Are you sort of seeing that trend across the board in the work that you're seeing, proposals that are coming across your desk? What are you seeing in terms of overall market dynamics when it comes to getting a game funded right now?
Well, it's certainly been more difficult the last few years with the rise of interest rates. Looking from the American experience, for the longest time, money was free, so venture capitalists or investors could put their money behind different projects because you weren't going to make any money keeping them in the bank anyway. With the rise of interest rates over the last couple of years, it's really frozen the VC market. I think I was talking to some like 2023, we didn't fund anything, and that's a bad reality. It's loosening up a bit, but you're right. The deal terms have become more onerous onto the developer. Granted, every negotiation is based on leverage, and leverage is simply who wants it more. And if you want it bad enough, then you maybe take a bad deal. We've got to find different ways for people to get their games, get their entertainments out into the marketplace without having to, sell your soul to rock and roll kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, on related to that topic, do you feel like publishers have a sort of responsibility or larger publishers, I should say, to fund projects that they don't expect is going to make a huge ROI? Is that something that they should be doing now? I feel like it's something they used to do, maybe. What are your thoughts on that now?
Sadly, Ralph, I think that mission statement, which I think was fairly robust in the beginning of the console generations and up until maybe 5-6 years ago, has started to contract. And again, back in the PS2 era where you could make a great PS2 game for single-digit millions, why not make 4 different games? But if every shot on goal is going to cost you $100 million, you can only take so many shots. And so you lean into what you feel are bankers, right? Something 2, something 3.
Sure.
And you can do the comp line. You can see the trajectory. The last one did this many units. This one will do those many units. And so you kind of step away from innovation when you're trying to protect that investment. I do believe that publishers, altruistically should know that if you provide more alternatives or more variety into the marketplace, you will get new customers, or you will appeal to maybe lapsed customers who maybe aren't totally into the FPS space and don't want to do some live service gaming thing, and maybe don't want to be a gangster in GTA, but they've lost some of that some of that energy or some of that courage to do that sort of thing. And I think it's going to debilitate the industry because they're just going to be centered around a few handful tentpole blockbuster games, and the new stuff doesn't break in. I think today, for example, I don't know if a game like Parappa the Rapper gets made in today's world.
What does get made, or they try to make it at least, live service games. And it feels like we're in the middle, or maybe we're at the tail end of like a live service gold rush, or a fool's gold rush even, where like billions of dollars has been spent trying to chase these things. Do you feel as though we are getting to the end of that era? Do you feel as though that's normalizing? Are we going to look back on this like we do the MMO rush back at, like in the late 2000s? What are your thoughts on that like live service chase?
Well, live service, you look at something like a Fortnite, or, in some degrees, even FIFA was sort of a live service game, GTA Online, those sorts of things. And people saw one of the attractive natures about that is that it kind of flattens the volatility curve of revenue. Instead of having shoot your game up, make a bunch of money, and then shoot another one up and make some money. But with recurring revenue against subscriptions or against downloadable content or other things in that world, you can kind of get a steady stream of revenue, and that's super attractive, particularly to the finance people. And so a lot of people wanted to jump in that swimming pool without realizing that if you're really a live service game player, you're not playing many of them because it's so consuming. I think once you have 6 big live service games out in the world, that pretty much floods the zone. And to come in laterally with, I've got my live service game over here, it's a tough proposition because there's a transfer cost for people saying, I'm going to give up my life that I've been doing on this game over there and get this new thing over there and invest it all into that, because they can't incorporate that into their life if they're already filled up with 1 or 2 live service games they're playing. So I think it looks attractive, like a mirage on the horizon. When you get there, it's super hard to break in. And I think we've seen in the last 12 to 18 months a number of big titles which just haven't made the leap, even though they tried.
And do you think the industry is going to wise up to that and say, okay, we tried it didn't work, time to try something else? Or do you think they're going to keep bashing their head against the wall because the return on investment or the upside is so huge?
I think people are learning now. I think we're discovering that it's a thing. It's super popular, but it may have jumped the shark, as they say. I mean, there was a time when everyone thought, do you remember Toys to Life?
Yeah, of course. That was huge.
That was huge until it wasn't.
Oh, that's right. The last gasp from Ubisoft, they had their like Starlink or something, I think it was called. I forget what it was called, but that was the last one that I saw in that category.
Well, it's true what they say about so many things. Once you're on the cover of mainstream media, the trend is over.
Yeah, sure.
And chasing that one right now is probably a bit late in the day.
Sure. Interested to talk about the, talking in broad terms about Sony, it's a very volatile kind of market right now. There's so many things shifting in terms of the centrality of hardware and the nature of IPs and whatever else. What do you think are the strengths that Sony PlayStation should be leaning into as it navigates this next era?
Well, I hesitate to comment directly on any particular company in this milieu, but I think Sony, having been there in the PlayStation group for 23 years, I will just say the central ethos that we had as the platform holder is that the main purpose of the platform holder is not to steal market share from other games in the market, but is to grow the pie bigger. That's the obligation of the platform holder, is not to take opportunity away from the third parties on your platform, but to make a bigger pie, to make a bigger install base, to grow the ability for all your third-party partners to be successful. And I think that remains, the Sony focus. But again, they're beset like every other company with the exigencies of the growing cost of creating content, the challenges in the technology bit of the platform business as both the competing hardware platforms. I'll leave Nintendo in their own lane because that's kind of a separate thing. But we're kind of topping out. We're kind of hitting a plateau of technology. You remember, Ralph, when you saw the first PS2 demo, comparing that to PS1, it was like night and day. It was like once you saw DVD, you couldn't watch VHS ever again.
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
But making those kinds of leaps in technology now it's near impossible. So everything is kind of incremental, and so the differentiation really has to come from the content, not so much from the silicon.
Yeah. Related to that, and I'm conscious of time, so we'll wrap up soon, but there's lots of talk about the, again, centrality of platforms and hardware and consoles, and that's not specific to Sony, that's everywhere. We hear a lot about declining console sales, which is a natural feature of when you're at the end of a console generation, but we're sort of not at the end of a console generation right now. We're kind of in the middle, but those numbers are still in decline. Do you think that's part of a broader trend where the console is slowly going to become a relic of the past, replaced by things like cloud or mobile? Or do you think that the console still has a bright future and we're kind of just in the middle of a cyclical situation here?
Yeah, the hardware generations, right? I mean, they seem to follow a certain pattern. This current generation does have this anomaly of 2 years of pandemic. Supply chains were constrained. It was difficult to get enough product into the market. Couldn't build it, you couldn't ship it, so that has changed kind of the acceleration of the uptake. I don't necessarily feel it's dropping off at a global level. It's probably maintaining its position. I don't feel it's dropping off that much. I can't speak to the dynamics of the other platform, but yeah, I think we're going to see, we've read about hardware revisions, much like we had PS4 Pro when I was back at the company. They're looking at the same sort of upgrade path inside the current generation of PS5. That'll appeal to the market that loves that sort of thing. But again, I think we're kind of reaching the zenith of where we can go with silicon in the home. I don't think mobile is the replacement. I don't think cloud's the replacement. But I do think there will be a tapering off of the mad missile race between the technology and the platforms. And like I said, I hope we can just get down to competing on content.
Yeah. Coming back to something, final question that you mentioned earlier, in terms of like getting more people to make games, because obviously it's also a generational thing that we're going through right now where, we grew up at a certain point when like the NES was our first console, or the SNES and whatever else. And like we're getting older now and a new generation is coming in. What sort of steps can the industry take to foster that sort of next generation of game makers?
I think it's incumbent on the industry to, so much focuses on how do we extract more profitability or operating income out of the properties at hand, and how do we reduce volatility, and how do we maximize the revenue potential of new games and such. And that's all fine and good. But I think it is important, and it's incumbent on all the leaders in the industry to realize that they have to engender the next generation of talent. They really need to put a focus on that. A lot of the work I'm doing with Girls Make Games is to create a next generation of young women who've grown up with coding. We look at women from the ages of 8 to 16 to bring them in and get them facile with game coding. I think that needs to go on. I think we need to do more outreach into other parts of the world. The gaming markets just can't be fed by the West Coast of America, Europe, and Japan. We need to find those talents elsewhere. And to wrap it up, that's what Gamescom looks like to me. This is the next generation of talent. These are the people who are going to create the games that you and I can't imagine. And we're going to find them to be fascinating. And we're wondering why we took so long to find it.
Cool. Well, it was really great chatting with you. And I hope we get the chance to do it again in the future. So thank you for your time.
I'll look for you at the JW.
Cool. Cheers, mate.
Cheers.
So, AG1.
What about it? It's not a secret. Or maybe it is if you're new to the show.
Yeah, actually, that's true, actually. Anyone new to the show may not have heard of this before. AG1, they're a long-time sponsor. We really appreciate the support. Basically, AG1 is essentially a supplement that kind of helps you feel better every day. Long and short of it is that it's kind of hard to like meet your daily nutritional requirements by just eating food to know that you're giving your body like all the vitamins and minerals it needs. And so AG1 is there to kind of just make that really easy. It's like in a little sachet thing or in a tub, and you just dunk it in some water and you stir it around and boom, you're done. And at that point, you've kind of given yourself a lot of what you need to have like good, healthy gut and better energy throughout the day. It also reduces your cravings for caffeine, which is really nice. And it's just good to start your day with something that is good for you, as opposed to eating waffles, which I don't do, but we all have moments of weakness, and who knows what happens in those moments. You know what I'm saying? You guys know what I'm saying, right? Help me out here.
Is this your way of trying to like tell us that you have a secret waffle addiction?
Sometimes it's like the thing where you just kind of like, damn it, I'm really needing that today. And then, you know, they're frozen and they're always there, and it's like, all right.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like AG1 for me and for all of us has been such part of our daily routines for so long now. For me as well, as someone who moved to America and discovered that they're kind of intolerant to a lot of foods, I really enjoy taking AG1 because it's like it helps me out with things like bloating, which sucks, quite frankly. And they also ran a study, and it was like 97% of people who took AG1 noticed that they had improved digestion after 90 days of daily use, which is pretty great.
And in another recent study, 80% of AG1 users reported less gas and bloating after just 30 days, which is, to not be a disgusting gas balloon is always a W.
We need to stop like our ad reads. We keep calling ourselves like mole creatures and gas.
We just insult ourselves.
We need to be nicer to ourselves.
Yeah, we do.
It's true.
So start with AG1 and notice the difference for yourself. We think it's a great, perfect step to investing in your health, and that's why they've been a partner of FPS for so long. Try AG1 and get a free bottle of vitamin D3K2 and get 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase at drinkag1.com/friends. That's a $48 value for free. So again, just go to drinkag1.com/friends. And big thanks to them for sponsoring this video.
All right, time for a user question. This one comes from the email address, which is contact@friendspersecond.com if you want to send them there. Or you can obviously subscribe to our Substack. It is free. We also take questions from the comment section in there. You know, giving you choice. The illusion of choice. Not really, it is actual choice. This one is from Edward Stockwell. Hello. First off, have been a long time user of each of your separate channels and have really enjoyed the podcast. You're like the Avengers or Justice League for my very specific niche interests in gaming. That's very kind of you. Thank you. Enough praise. Here's my question. If and when you go back to replay a video game, particularly one that involves a lot of choice, do you find yourself purposefully trying to make new choices in the new playthrough, or are you following mostly the same path as before? And building off of this, so has a little section about, you know, Red Dead 2, The Witcher, Mass Effect. I may try different choices here and there on side quests, but overall stick to the good path or the good endings. It's like if I'm rewatching a movie, I want to re-experience that same story I fell in love with. Building off this, are there any choices in games that even if you do opt for a totally new path, you still stick to the same choices every time? I think I've played The Witcher 3 4 times now, and every time choose to romance Yennefer, or Panam in Cyberpunk, or Liara in Mass Effect. Do you also mix up romance choices, or do you find yourself too loyal to your chosen video game bae?
That's so fun. That's like an old reference, bae. Do we still use bae? Is it allowed?
Do the kids still use bae?
Like
it's illegal. The adults used bae, and now they get laughed at.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. It's a really interesting question. Like, first of all, I don't really replay many games purely because I don't have time to. But there are some that I have, you know, like, and funnily enough, The Witcher is an example. Mass Effect is an example. Dragon Age is an example. Yeah, I think those really like choice-driven games where your choice is manifest in meaningful ways along the journey. And I think, like, you know, that's one of the things for me, because I don't like it when games are like, oh, make different choices along the way, but then you only see the outcome of those choices at the end. That's not particularly interesting to me, because I'm like, I could have just looked up the YouTube video for that to see how that different ending plays out, you know? So for me personally, if I am considering whether I want to replay like a choice-driven game, I want those choices to matter along the way. You know, like, who do you let die in Mass Effect? And more importantly, like, which persona do you adopt with Shepard? And I think that is, to this day, to me, Mass Effect Renegade Shepard still stands out as the single best, most impactful decision that you can make in any video game that I've played.
What, punching the reporter?
All of it. Renegade Shepard's dialogue is so different. He or she is such a complete character when you choose to go that renegade path. It is a completely different person. And it feels like you're playing through a different game at that point, you know, because it's not just subtle differences with your like choices, or it's like you are a different character playing through that game. And I fucking love that. And so I think that, again, really matters to me. And I haven't played through Baldur's Gate, but I know you could achieve that same outcome. If you wanted to go down that asshole path and make these really different choices, you absolutely could choose to do wildly different things the entire way through. And again, it would be like you're playing a totally different character, totally different game. Yeah, where it's more fig leaf is where I really tap out. And I'm like, whatever, man. Like I said, just the YouTube videos will suffice. I don't know. That's how I approach it. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, I don't replay as much as I would like to, but when I did, I can't help but always just kind of go for the good guy decisions. I don't know. It's just like what I naturally just keep falling to. Because I guess maybe it's like, I was trying to think of why. Maybe it's just because, I don't know, like it's nicer to connect with a character that is like normal and trying to be good. But I do like to go back and try the bad path when they, like you mentioned with Mass Effect, you took the words right out of my mouth, where there's like some sort of tangible, noticeable difference. For me, it's the simple stuff where it's like, I like to see if that choice affects the world, or even just the look of my character, or I get like a cooler outfit. That stuff always really stood out to me. One of my favorite examples is going back and replaying KOTOR and being bad and seeing the Force corruption manifest on your character's face.
For sure.
Little by little. Like, it's such a silly thing, but it's like that little tangibility to your choice that just makes it a little more satisfying. And it's fun to like track the progress. Oh, look how evil I'm getting. Oh, cool. These decisions are doing something. Fable, of course, the number one example. Yeah. I would bring so many fuckers to like the evil demon church and sacrifice them just so I could grow devil horns just to see what it was like. You know, that stuff was fun. That stuff was really fun.
I think as well, I think this is one of the problems with like choice in video games as well, where you need the bad path to open up opportunities rather than just close them down.
Yes.
And I think that like Fallout or like many RPGs kind of really get this wrong, where they're like, do you want to help me? And you're like, no, I don't. And you're like, well, good talk. And that's the end of it. That's your end of your interaction with the character. And that's how it all goes, you know? Whereas like, I think Disco Elysium, for example, or those sorts of games show you, well, when you have a negative outcome or you choose the bad thing, there are all sorts of new opportunities that become available as a result of that. I love that stuff, you know, and I think any game that tries to do choice needs to do it that way. Otherwise, you may as well not bother, you know, like...
To make it not binary either, like so I was talking to a friend of the show, Jimmy Champagne. He's playing through Rogue Trader, and he was saying that the good and bad decisions in that are in the Warhammer lore. So it's something more of like, oh, you have some people you can save. Do you bring them along? You really shouldn't, because it's going to be a strain on your resources. And then you can say, no, sorry, we're not bringing you. And the game is like, good job, that actually made sense. You know, like instead of just being like, that was bad.
When it comes to characters, I'm going to move us along to the second half of the question, which was about romance.
About my crushes.
My video game base. No, when it comes to Mass Effect, I definitely have a canonical nice shepherd, which is what I kind of always do. However, I did redo Mass Effect a lot to get a bunch of different romances, because I am also in the same boat where it's like I don't get the chance to replay games as much anymore. With Mass Effect, never underestimate being depressed in a dream. I replayed Mass Effect 2 so many times. I even romanced Jacob, which was actually a pretty good romance, except he has like the cringiest line where he goes like, but the prize. And I'm like, I would have gotten the ick. But it was actually like a pretty fun romance, because I think his loyalty mission is one of the best. Anyway, I typically do have like a canonical video game boyfriend, girlfriend too. In Mass Effect, it is Gareth Vicarian, of course.
It's everyone's.
Yeah.
Let's be real. And then there's there's Jack, of course, but like, you know, that's just a little bit of you know.
Jack is like a
not a lot of not a lot of affection or feeling in that moment. Let's just put it that way.
It's hot though.
Yeah. Especially for its time.
Yeah. I mean, no. It's weird though because it does feel. I think the comparison to like rewatching a movie is very, very apt, because part of me wishes that I could be that person who wants to go for multiple endings for things, but really, no. I just want to. This is why I listen to the same albums all day, every day. I listen to the same shit I listened to when I was 15.
Don't we all?
Today I was listening to
Californication, baby.
Oh, I don't listen to the Red Hot. I don't listen to the Red Hot.
Oh yeah, me either. I just thought of that.
No, I just don't listen to the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Today I was listening to Volume 3, The Subliminal Verses by Slipknot. So that's where I'm at.
There you go. Yeah, that's it.
Interesting music to work through. But anyway, thank you so much for your question. Like I said, contact friendspersecond.com or friendspersecond.substack.com to get those in. Sorry if we can't answer them all, but we do read them and they are very, very good. Like we've got like a bank of really good ones that we want to come back to.
Yeah, we do.
But moving us along, so as we mentioned at the top of the show, we have Jess from Gamespot to talk about Metaphor ReFantazio, a game that we're all, like me, Jake, and Ralph are all in various stages of completing, but Jess has obviously finished it, reviewed it, and it's getting incredibly high scores across the board and seems to be selling pretty well. And so we wanted to chat about this game and whether it could be Game of the Year contender. So here we go.
I feel like I look more sickly than usual. I don't know.
Yeah, you look a little bit more pale, and then a little bit more red. Exactly, pale and red cheeks. Now?
I ate lasagna right before this. Like literally, like 30 seconds before this, I had lasagna. So
you're Garfield, like channeling your Garfield. That's right. What day is it?
I'm all sweaty and lasagnaed up. I apologize.
Nice.
Wait,
nice.
Are you feeling okay, or was it just the lasagna?
Joey bag of donuts here. Sorry guys, I just came from a lasagna. Let's do this.
I'm like all sweat. I'm like breathing.
Yes, I got the lasagna sweats.
What are we here to talk? What are we here to talk about again?
Oh, video games. Metaphor ReFantazio? Is that how you pronounce it?
Fantazio.
Yeah.
That's
right. Yeah.
The Italians.
First of all, what is this name? Let's just start right there.
It's a bad name.
It is?
Yeah.
Okay, right. Where do you think it came from? They just thought it sounded cool.
It probably sounds cool as hell in Japanese, maybe?
Yeah, maybe.
Oh.
Maybe.
Unless it's explained within the game, and so Ralph, Jake, and I just haven't got there yet.
Well, I mean, if it's like a metaphor for fantasy, sure, in the literal sense. But like, I don't know. First of all, we should probably introduce Jess.
Hello, welcome to the podcast.
Sorry, Jess. We're just like vibing straight in.
We could get around this by saying, we introed her in the previous section, but no. Jess from GameSpot, my colleague, my coworker, the writer of a fantastic review of Metaphor ReFantazio.
That was a banger.
Thank you for joining us, Jess. It's really nice to have you here.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. Anytime. I'm so honored.
Don't be. By the end of it, you'll be like, this was a huge mistake.
Oh, so we're obviously here to talk about Metaphor, a game that So Jess has obviously finished it, reviewed it. Ralph, you are
40 hours deep.
40 hours deep.
So I'm like just past the tutorial phase. No, I'm joking. I reckon I'm approaching the halfway mark. I'm taking it a bit slow because I'm doing like all the side content. Mm-hmm. So I'm feeling like I'm not yet at the halfway mark. I've heard rumors that there are like big twists that start to kick in later, and I haven't had any of those really big twists yet. So I'm feeling like I'm not yet halfway through.
And Jake, you are like
14, 15 hours or so.
15, and I'm about 20, so just ahead of you. Jess, you gave it a 10 out of 10, which is an incredible feat for any game to reach. Can you give us kind of like, not the cliff notes, but like, what was it about that game that set it apart from like a 9 to get that 10 out of 10?
So I think for me, what sets something apart from a 9 versus a 10 is when It's so weird. It's so weird to be like, oh, it's just that quality. But like, it kind of is that. It's like you play it and you're like, this is in some way, shape, or form moving the needle forward. And this game just had that. It really does. It's so, I don't know. It's hard to put it into words. It's just very... It reminded me of playing like Final Fantasy back, when I was 10 years old, right? It just has that sort of creativity and compassion and optimism, like I reached the end and I'm just like, wow, I feel like slightly less jaded as a person in the midst of everything happening in the world right now, which is pretty incredible because that's, it's hard when you get into your 30s. And so, yeah, I don't know. I just think that it was something that really moved me. And once I finished playing it, I'm like, I think this is going to move other people too. It brings me back to, I guess, kind of like the spectacle of playing like Final Fantasy 9 or something for the first time, right? And that opening that is just from the get-go, you're doing stuff, you're having your little sword fight, like it's just fun. It's fun. It's an experience. It's spectacular. The twists in that game, which I don't know if any of you have really hit anything that is kind of like a big whoa, like what is happening here? I
had one of them spoiled for me.
No.
Well, like, holy shit. Like, yeah.
No, there was like, I literally was playing through some of the situations where like if one thing goes wrong, everything is fucked, and like I actually felt tense. Like I was like, I don't know how this is gonna work. I don't know if this is gonna be okay. I actually am invested in these characters now. And that was one thing when I did the previews for us, I was like, I don't know how I feel about the party. There's no romance and like I don't feel particularly drawn to anyone yet. And then after playing that game, I was like, this is the tightest party that Atlas has done probably in, like since Persona 3, I would maybe say. Like it's just really good, if not even better than the Persona games. Like,
oh my god,
even the side stories too. Yeah,
big words. I mean, Hulkenberg, obviously an immediate fave.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I don't know, my little Persona.
I like Stroll from the jump, man. I was like, I get this guy.
I like this
He's
guy.
my man. I get him.
Oh. I literally walked into the preview event in New York and took a photo with his cutout, giving him a little kiss because he's my husband.
Nice. Excellent.
But there's no romance in the game.
Yeah.
No, there's not. But, and this is something that I think I just put it as one line in my review because it didn't seem like something to dive into. But I think that it actually benefits a lot from not having, there's like a couple characters who like, you talk to, and it kind of seems like maybe one day in the future there could be something there. But I think that it benefits a lot from not having this sort of, if you hit the right buttons, this person will give you a kiss. That can be fun. Don't get me wrong. I love a good BioWare game, but there was just something about it that felt more sincere. And I think it tied into the themes of the game more. And it really worked for me.
Totally agree with that. 100%. I mean, like, I think most romance stuff in most video games is dumb and goofy. It just is. Like sometimes it works and it's like it's fun. It's like, hey, yeah, sure, whatever. But like I think most of the time it's just kind of awkward and a bit silly and whatever. I feel like this game is trying to do so many things at once and succeeding in so many things that for it to like sort of crowbar in some cheesy romance stuff, I don't know. If you'd have done it in a way that was like really serious in service to the themes of the plot, it actually could have worked, right? But it's again, a lot of the time that just doesn't happen. A lot of the time it's that tick box thing where it's like, which dialogue prompt should I choose to make sure I get laid in the end, So yeah, I agree. I think the game does benefit from not having that distraction from a gameplay perspective, but also I think in terms of its focus, it allows you to focus on other themes and other ideas, which the game is more preoccupied with. But I was going to say... What you said about Final Fantasy... Sorry, Liz?
No, I was going to say, I was playing a meta game with this little segment, which is how long we could go without mentioning Persona. And I want to say we lasted like 3 minutes, by the way.
I mean,
but
yes.
It's impossible not to.
I was so proud of myself when I wrote my review. I literally went back through, it was like Control F, and like I typed in Persona because I'm like, I gotta hold off at least for a while. That way I don't get the shit and it's like, oh yeah, it was, first paragraph mentioned Persona, because people will do that.
Oh yeah.
I was like, no,
But like,
I'm gonna.
if you do that, what the fuck, man? Like, as if you can talk about this game without referencing Persona and like without referencing.
Who cares? Persona's good.
Persona is good. Exactly, but it's like, obviously this is an extension of their game making formula. It's like, that is the type of game that they make, and this is an iteration on that. And so it would be so weird to try to dance around that and not acknowledge that the influence that Persona has had on this, because this is kind of Persona evolved in many ways, like in terms of its approach to time and its approach to relationships and its approach to combat and classes and whatever. Like, it has that starting point that feels very familiar, but it definitely remixes core elements significantly. Excuse me. And so, yeah, like 100%, man, make that Persona comparison, like own it 100%. Yeah. But I think the Final Fantasy comparison is the one that I was like most drawn to, because I totally agree with what you're saying. I as I was playing through this, I was like, damn, this feels like playing Final Fantasy VIII, right? Because Final Fantasy VIII had this kind of steampunky vibe in a very different way than Final Fantasy VII did, right? It had this sort of world that felt very ruled by politics, versus Final Fantasy VII felt ruled by corporations, Just the overall vibe of 8, I just felt so much of it coming through here as I was playing through Metaphor. But also, I think the JRPG genre, like, back then, those games were at the absolute pinnacle of what video games were, like Final Fantasy games, right? And I think that genre has really fallen by the wayside over the years. It's not as powerful as it used to be. It's a lot more niche these days. And I think Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is a good example of how you might modernize that formula by making it more of a Western action game, okay? Mm. What I think Persona game, like, Atlas games do, and in particular this one, is I think they really show you a vision of what the modern day JRPG can look like, where it still retains a lot of those classic structural elements, gameplay elements, tropes, what have you, but they feel entirely contemporary. Like, this feels so modern. No, even though it's still turn-based, for example, it is like the tightest, snappiest, coolest, best turn-based combat, or JRPG turn-based combat I played in a long time, right? Their approach to storytelling, it's very like Japanese anime kind of thing, but it's not leaning into like the whole high school thing the way that Persona was. It's trying to provide like a high fantasy spin on that. It just really works. Like, there are so many aspects to it that I think are, really pushing into new territory for this genre. And it's rare to see that, I think. And so that's one of the reasons I love it as much as I do. I love the Xenoblade series, but even Xenoblade feels kind of like old in a way, like it just feels a bit old, right? Even though I love it, this doesn't feel remotely old. It feels so fresh and so, just like it just kind of leaps off the screen in every frame.
It does, yeah.
I mean, should we start? Should we go with art style? Because there are so many. The thing that I love about Atlas games is obviously they are so stylish, but they manage this gameplay loop that is just everything you do feeds back in on itself in such a satisfying way. Like with Persona 5, if you are upping your skills or like upping your social links, and that will directly influence how you are in battle or the personas you get. And with Metaphor, it's no different. You're upping your virtues, which will help you unlock quests, which will help you then have different combat encounters, and then by that way you level up, and then you mix and match your archetypes. But everything on top of that, like not even just content with being really good and fun to play, everything is so fucking stylish, and everything is so like the art style. Obviously it's Sojima-san, who was the lead artist on Persona, I think 3, 4, 5, definitely 5, and like it's just, I love fantasy, and I love it when there is a new spin on fantasy. I love new fucked up monsters. I love characters who the design I'm immediately drawn to, like Hulkenberg. I keep bringing her up because I love her so much.
Sure.
But like I did see a really good tweet where it was, they made the blonde sidekick character even hotter, because there is always one in like Persona games. But even just the way that the the archetypes, like your little attacking persona ghost guy look.
They look so sick, man.
Every
I just
single
want
one
like
is cool as hell.
I want a figure of every single one of them on my shelf. They're just like, they look, and I love how they have a different color depending on which like character you're using them with. I just love that little flourish.
Yeah.
You know, the style is great. What do you guys think of the menus? Because do you guys think they're a bit overdone? They're a bit much, or do you think like, nah, they're just right? Like, what do you think about that?
It took a while to get used to.
I that's kind of how I feel too. Is when I remember when I did the preview, one of the things I was doing it with Jean-Luc from Gamespot as well, and we were both sitting in this giant chair together, like playing through because they only had one appointment for us, and we were like, we both want to see this so bad, so we just decided to share. And both of us were kind of looking at each other like, there's a lot of texture in this game. There's a lot going on. The menus, a lot of color, because it's not like Persona 5, right? Or even any of the Persona games where it's like you have this one color that is kind of used throughout the whole thing and kind of ties it all together. Metaphor, it's like you have yellows and blues and pinks and like that like foresty green. Like there's a lot of colors going on. You know, and so we were both kind of like, that might be something that we don't like when this game is out. So, I mean, that was something that we noted, and we said this could be an issue for some people because it's very busy. But once I got used to it and I was playing, you know, a longer part of the game, I really loved it. It grew on me a lot.
Yeah, it sounds like such a silly thing to discuss to some people, like especially if you haven't seen the game. But it is like a part of the experience. It was for me with Persona 5, where I was like, holy shit, this takes the game to the next level, like flourishes like this. With this, it's like, it is a lot. Like there's like 80 different fonts. There's like Leonardo da Vinci sketches that just pop up for no reason. When the time changes or when the day changes, it's like a whole different clock thing. And you're like, what the fuck is going on? But it just, it kind of just grips you. You know, there's no way of, my only complaint is really like on screen when you're walking around in the towns and whatever, like it just feels very busy and the text box is popping up. That's where I didn't
those
really
like lines, the speed lines when you're like trying to move quickly or whatever. I'm like, we could probably do without those. No. That's the part that I was like, a little bit much. But I agree. I think overall, the menus really add something to it. Just I think it also is just a reminder in every frame that you're playing an Atlas game. And it's kind of nice to be reminded of that because you sort of trust this developer so much and you appreciate their style. And so as, you know, as in your face as it is, it's kind of in a way comforting, you know?
The painterly quality of it really does it for me. Like a lot, like the character, like the party screen, like it's like their faces, but there's like a texture of like oil paint to it. And like, I just, as an art enjoyer, like I just like little things like that. Those flourishes.
I also think the music is so additive.
That pivot, that battle theme, man,
so
it's good. Goes so hard. It's unbelievable. I don't even know what that music is. I don't know what language it is. I don't know what the deal is. I just like, whatever it is, I want more of it. That's all I know. Yeah.
It's like, it gets me so amped. Yeah. And even if it's just a random, like run-of-the-mill random encounter battle that I'm having, I'm just like, I got this.
Totally.
You know when one of those battle themes is good when you can do like a 5-second quick, because the quality of life in this game in terms of how battles go down is so smooth and really well done. So sometimes you can knock out a battle so quickly and the music just for that little snippet still fits perfectly and feels right. And it's not like, I only got the beginning part of the song that's annoying. No, you got a nice little flavor to it. It was good.
Yeah. I think when you go to Academia, I was like, how are you going to one up the iconic Velvet Room? And then they've got it. They've got one that I was just like,
straight
I
up.
was walking around, like reading all the books and stuff and talking to Moore and petting the cat, obviously. And the whole time I was like, oh, this is nice. I want this to be on.
Isn't it funny though how they do have their things that because like as soon as Academia showed up, I'm like, oh, I'm transported to a weird place with a weird guy in it and creepy music plays. Perfect. Yep. I know what's going on here.
Yeah, that's right. Don't mention Persona. Yeah, no, I totally. I think on that topic of like combat and, you know, encounters, I think that it's obviously pivoted to like a class-based system, which I think works super well because of the way you're able to kind of splice different abilities together for different characters and create these custom characters as they're able to inherit abilities. And you can make some really strong character types, like class types, that just feel super fun to play. And there's total flexibility within that. So from a buildcraft perspective, I really love it. But I also think like the construction of dungeons And the combat challenge that they pose is also really clever because, you know, you get little bits of intel before you step in. You're like, watch out for these guys. They're weak to this or they do that. And you're like, all right. I guess I should bring this thing. And you're like, well, I don't have that thing. So I got to go level it up first. And then you might go around and do some other things and level up that class so you can get that ability and whatever. And then you splice it together and then you come back to that dungeon. You're like, all right, I got what you told me that I need to have. Let's do it. And then at that point, you can kind of progress through the dungeon in a way that feels right. Without doing that, you can still sort of like brute force your way through, but it's way harder.
I got my ass beat. I was like, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to just try and do it this way. And I got bodied.
It's a brutal game. And like something that I really like too is just how many kind of interesting twists there are on that. Because it's not necessarily just like, they're weak to fire, have fun. You know, they do stuff where it's like, oh, the people who run this den, right, are like really greedy. So if you do the merchant class and you throw, I was about to say throw gills. If you throw gold, they'll run and you'll stun them for a turn. They're not going to do anything because they're getting the money. Or, you know, there's one where it's like, oh, these, you know, creatures are afraid of magic users. So if they see a staff or something like that, they're going to freak out and they're going to like go like berserk or get enraged or whatever and attack you, or they're just going to be focused on hitting that person, which generally a staff user is like a weaker character, you know, lower defense. So like that's what they'll go for. And it's just really brilliant. I also think that the main dungeons in this game, and I've been watching my husband play it after he like shut me in a room and so that I could play it because he didn't want anything spoiled. And so now I'm like sitting on the couch watching him play at night while our kid is asleep. And I'm just like, man, this game was good. You know, he's going through all these dungeons like, oh shit, like I forgot how cool that one was. And I forgot how cool that one was. And it's like, they just feel so much more intentional and put together, and there's these gimmicks and there's like these fun ones that'll take you on like an espionage type, you know, quest. And I don't know, it's just like I said, there's a lot of spectacle to the game. It feels like it's not cinematic. Cinematic is the wrong word, but it just feels like very put together and like it is telling this story. Yeah.
It's like very deliberate composition. Like there's everything feels very deliberate. And I think that's a broader point around the game. Like, okay, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. It's an interesting like point of comparison because these games are like absolutely top contenders for Game of the Year. I think a lot of people don't like Rebirth because of how bloated it feels if you do all of the things that it offers you. And that's an absolutely true thing. If you do everything, you kind of ruin that game for yourself if you do everything. I'm doing everything so far in Metaphor, and it doesn't feel that way. I don't feel like I'm exhausting myself while I'm doing all this additional side content because I think everything that they've put together feels very deliberate and it's there for a reason. There's just a lot of it, right? Whereas I do think with Rebirth, there was like, well, we've got a new region. We need some more towers now and we need some more enemy hunts and we need some more fucking follow the thing, the trail to the statue. We need all that, right? It wasn't adding value. But I do think by fusing these personal stories and relationships, by giving you this flexibility in terms of your build craft, by giving you these unique dungeon challenges that ask you to do certain things, all of it coalesces to create something that feels very worthwhile. And so even though there is a lot of side content in this game, it feels very valuable. And I think from that perspective, the fact that you can fill 80 to 100 hours of content without any of it feeling like filler, that's a big deal, man. Yeah. Like that's a very hard thing to pull off.
Well, it reminds me of like what you said earlier, as far as it almost feels like this continuation of JRPGs if they hadn't gotten progressively more westernized and if they hadn't like kind of retained some mechanics that nowadays we find a bit more outdated. You know, I think that it's really good at not going into, okay, you know, here's a new area, here are towers to unlock, here's random side quests also. And even the bounties, right? Like the bounties can be this side thing, but there's so few of them throughout the entire game. And that's not a knock against it. That's great because it doesn't feel like you're just, you know, going out and killing this thing and coming back. They feel a little bit more intentional. You know, and like that's the whole game really. I mean, even when you are in the later parts, like there are some optional boss battles that are brutal. Like they are truly like, I don't know, like I would describe them as like the weapons of the game, right? Like Final Fantasy VII, like there are some brutal optional fights. But like what drove me to do those wasn't this sense of like obligation or completion. I was just like, this is cool. Like I want to do this whole thing.
Absolutely.
But and it all fits though timeline wise too. I just feel like the game is like from the mechanics to it's just very streamlined, and that comes through in how they kind of dish out quests and take you through. You know, if you manage your time somewhat well, you can max all the social links, do all the quests, do all the bounties, do everything on your first playthrough, and it doesn't feel overwhelming or stressful or like, you know, you have to look up a walkthrough because you don't know how to possibly do all that, like some Persona games. Yeah, it's just really good. It's so well done.
Yeah, I think one of the things that quality of life wise I really enjoy, and to your point about some of the fights being brutal, is that like at any time you can just restart.
Yeah,
which is
helpful.
So nice, because there's some time where I just start it and I'm like, oh, I'm stupid. Like I'm not doing this right. I'm not maximizing my turns because I was trying to do something else, then I realized it's not working, and then it clicks halfway through and I can just immediately restart, and then something that would give me so much bother is now like not a joke, but you know, manageable. One thing that's been difficult for me to do is because playing Persona 5 vanilla, SP was such a rare resource and it was a pain in the ass. And they with Royal, and it was like, again, to your point that like in Metaphor you feel like you can do every social link, every like raise all your virtues. In Royal it was almost like they went that too far in that direction, because you had so much time. You could literally do everything very, very quickly, very easily. And SP regen was ridiculous. So you could do a dungeon in one in-game day, and then you would have the whole in-game month to do or whatever the rest of it. So I got used to that. I got lazy. Coming into Metaphor, my MP, oh my God, where is it?
Yeah. But that is like the best mechanic, I think, in the entire game.
Oh, it's so smart.
Because without that, that creates the tension that I actually feel like is... I would actually like it if the game was a little bit more tightly tuned on that front. Like, I kind of don't like the fact that I can do everything so easily. Like, I do wish that I had to make some more decisions, because I can't do everything on a build craft front. Like, it would just take too long to level up all of the characters for all of the roster or whatever. So I have to make some choices there, but I don't have to make any choices when it comes to what I do each day. I just do it all and then I'm okay. You know, I've still got time in the dungeon. I've still got 3 or 4 days left to clear that dungeon, come out, med up, go back in. And I do wish that part of the game was a little more tightly tuned. I can see why Atlas have done it this way, because it makes for a very pleasant experience. But I think it would have been interesting to explore something that asked a little more of me, I think.
Yeah, because the difficulty level...
There are, but they don't affect that stuff, I don't believe. I mean, maybe they kind of would, I suppose, given there'd be more output damage, so you'd need to spend more mana to med, in which case you'd have to leave the dungeons more, which would give you less time. That makes sense. But I don't know, maybe that does solve that problem if I played at a higher difficulty, maybe.
It is interesting that you say that, though, because when I did the preview event at Summer Game Fest, I spoke to Hashino, and he mentioned that because one of the themes throughout the game, and this really comes in a lot at the end, like it is talked about constantly, is just this sense of like anxiety and not being able to help or do everything that you wish that you could. And then also another theme of it is obviously travel, because in the Persona games, like you are primarily staying in one location. That starts to kind of feel like your home, and there's charm in that. But they really wanted like that sense of journey, that sense of like you are spending your time, you are going somewhere. You know, and he mentioned that he wanted it to feel like you're going on vacation and there's 30 things that you want to do, but you know, realistically, you have to narrow it down to like 10 because you can't do everything. You'll have to come back. And he wanted to kind of bottle that and capture that feeling. But when I played it, that was something where I was like, he was going for that. And maybe that's kind of there. Maybe I'm just like, I don't want to be like, maybe I'm such a gamer. But no, like I've had experience with Persona games, right? And so like I kind of know what I'm doing in that regard. But like I was able to do everything. And so I was like, I kind of thought like there's still replayability, but I almost thought I would immediately jump back into it because I needed to see certain things through. But I was able to kind of resolve everything I needed to.
Yeah, true.
What do you guys think of the opening? As in, like that opening 10 hours when the game is going, hey, look at all my systems. Here's how they work. Here's how we're gonna walk you through everything. Because I felt, it's the same with every Persona game. It can just feel a little overwhelming, but then there is always a moment where you just have they take you off the reins and stuff. And I feel like with Metaphor, I maybe struggled a little more than I think I did with Persona 4 or 5. And I think maybe just because it was introducing Uchronia, all of these characters, all of these stories, races, the religion, like it felt a bit overwhelming. And I was wondering if I was alone in that. Like, Jake, you are roughly, a few hours behind me. How did you find it?
Yeah, I just kind of thought that the first couple of hours were a little dull in terms of just like what you're doing. It just felt like very typical JRPG opener fare. I joked in some videos and stuff how it feels like right after what it was essentially the demo is when things start to get really interesting. So I tell people, I'm like, well, if you played through the demo and you didn't think that was boring and you love that, then it only gets better from there.
Yeah, I'm like so unbothered by it in the sense that like you kind of know what you're saddling up for with these games. If you buy this game and you think, hey, the first 2 hours sucks, it's like, well, you got to do some research, man. I don't know what to tell you. You got
to hit the 10-hour mark, and then you can make a decision.
Yeah, which like obviously sounds ridiculous because everyone's like, well, that's dumb, but it's like, no, it depends. Like some games are like that. That's just how it is.
Like and this is one of those games. I hate to be the person who's like, well, the anime gets really good after 200 episodes, but it's like, it kind of like JRPGs kind of do have that quality to them where like,
totally.
I mean, some of my, like there's a few that are exceptions, right? But like a lot of my favorite ones, it's, you still have to kind of get used to the systems and used to the setting because it is just different,
Totally.
I really liked it though. I do think I completely understand people who do think it's slow. And I think that the good thing is that it actually, the game as a whole just gets better. Like it reaches points where, I don't know, it's just so good. Like I don't want to go into spoilers or anything, but there's just like twists and turns and, stakes are amplified and it does the great thing of not you doing a lot of misdirection and redirection to where it's like you feel like there's always this straight path through and it's just going up and down a ton. So yeah, I don't know. I think that if you did play the demo and you're like, I'm on the fence, I will say it only gets better. But yeah, I thought the demo was pretty solid. I like that you start off immediately kind of going out to combat and you have that party member stroll initially. Because I think that it could be slower for sure.
I think my one criticism of the game is like, it's not one that's shared by most people, I know that. But like thematically, I always just find it far too heavy-handed with what it's trying to talk about, right? Racism's bad. We know. And of course it'd be really interesting to make that point in a very subtle way, but it's like it really bashes you over the head with like, what if the world was better? And you're like, okay, cool. Can you make that point more subtly? You know what I mean? And I think the game has received a lot of praise for its themes. And I echo that. Like, I think it is interesting what it's trying to talk about, right? It is very adult in the themes that it's trying to pursue. But I think it approaches it in a very kind of like young adult kind of way, which maybe that's the target audience for a game like this. Fair enough, right? But I just think I'm far more drawn to storytelling, stories, whatever, that leaves a lot more unsaid. And these games definitely don't do that, And so as much as I enjoy the characters and what have you, when it starts to get thematic, that's where I really kind of go, all right, we're doing more of this. Do you know what I mean? So, which is like a real contrast to like Silent Hill 2, which I just played through this past week. And it's like, yes, this is exactly how I want you to tell my stories. Don't say anything, So I don't know. How you guys feel about that the writing aspect of it, the themes, the politics? Like, what are your thoughts?
Who wants to go?
I would say
I'll totally go. I just wanted to.
It feels heavy-handed, but I don't know. I think just what they are taking on, I still find interesting, and really just like how to bring up the Persona games, like they kind of delved into like stuff that felt a little weird or like not really discussed in video games. So like here it's even just like little things for them to like, you know, really talk about like the utopian ideals and stuff like that. And just they're like, oh, I don't really hear about that in too many games. Even if, yes, it's very like, again, it's like everything should be good, racism bad. Like, I don't know. It just, and again, I'm still working my way through it, but like I just, they're taking on stuff, and I always think of like, well, in Persona 3 they had guys that like shot themselves in the fucking head to summon, and like that was cool. So like they're just doing stuff that even if it's handled a little heavily, it feels a little against the grain and not really shown or talked about in games.
Yeah,
as
I
often.
mean, with Persona games, you know, I always think they are very much heart on the sleeve. Oh, it's the spirit of rebellion. Like if you're talking about Persona 5, I don't think subtlety has ever been this group of developers like strong point, but I think that kind of adds to the charm of it. Also, you know, like it's a constant, it's another reinforcement of what you are fighting for that like feeds into the story, feeds into why you're doing what you're doing. So I don't mind it so much, but then again only 20 hours in, so maybe when I'm at your part I'm just like,
I don't think it's radically different from 20 hours to 40 hours. I think the overall tone, you've got it, you know, unless it changes from 40 hours to 80 hours. I don't know, Jess.
So it does, I would say. I think that you kind of have this idealism that is at times more naive, but also very sincere and also more thoughtful and maybe more radical than a lot of games do. Because it's not so much just like racism's bad, we should stop that. You know, it goes a lot more into like, these are the systems that uphold that. And these are like, it goes into that a bit more than a lot of games who try to tackle that do, and it does it way more successfully. And it also kind of, I think, by the time that you know, stuff starts shaking up, you kind of realize like the dangers of idealism, but also how vital it is despite it being a dangerous thing. So I think that it really does take you on a journey, and just with the context of everything happening right now in the world. I described one of my friends, I was texting them who they were also reviewing the game, and I was like, it reminds me of talking with your therapist, right? Where they'll say something and you know it's true, you've heard it a million times, but like just having it repeated and having it said at you makes you be like, oh wow, like that is true. Like that is something that I kind of needed to hear. And it has a lot of moments like that where it just says something so sincerely, so like, you know, tenderly, or the person who's kind of going through something. It's so resonant. There's certain characters like Brigitte I love, but just an angel woman. And her whole storyline is just so heartbreaking and so good. And seeing these kind of, I don't know, like I totally get what you mean as far as it being a bit ham-fisted, going a bit heavy on it. But I think that it works when you consider this is kind of posed to be a fairy tale, and those, like, you know, obviously having the moral of the story and these themes and kind of that lesson is very important. Even having archetypes, right? Like it all kind of ties back to literature and being like a story. So I think that it works, and I think that it progressively kind of touches on what it said before more meaningfully later down the road. So I would say stick with it. You'll probably like it, I think.
That's cool. That's good. I'm glad to hear that. That sounds really good. Yeah.
Do we think it is a Game of the Year contender?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think I think it feels like Rebirth had it on lock before this. I mean, not everyone. Again, I think so. I mean, let's just look. I mean, if you just look at the,
if Shadow of the Erd Tree is not.
Okay, if you want to say that, maybe even then, I would very strenuously argue. I would fight that fight very hard. The idea that like Erd Tree was better than Rebirth. Like I don't know. I loved Erd Tree, but like Rebirth is a pretty remarkable accomplishment when you like take it in aggregate. Regardless, it's very up there. Is there anything else in that running right now? Like, let's say Erd Tree, Rebirth.
So I just pulled up my GG, right, to look at the games that I have listed on here. Metaphor is number 1 on my list, and then I have Rebirth, and I have Erd Tree, and that's always tricky because it's DLC. So like, how is that going to fare in all of this? And like, there's a few games on here like Hades 2 and Fields of Mystery where those are early access. I think that like Astrobot maybe has a shot, just because of how much people love that game.
Definitely.
But if you're talking about like these big, epic, sprawling, games, I think that Metaphor probably does have it. It's just hard because I know that, like, obviously, like the Atlas games have grown in popularity. I feel like even look at the numbers that Metaphor is doing. And I feel like it was not advertised as much as it could have been in the process leading up to it. I had some friends who like love Persona games, played Persona 5, then bought Royal and played all of Royal. And I told them like, oh yeah, I'm reviewing, Friendier, but I'm reviewing Metaphor. And they were like, what's that?
Xbox marketing deal, man. They did an Xbox marketing deal. Like, I'm sorry, but it's like, come on, that is not the right console for that game. That is ridiculous. Like, it's just, I respect Xbox's hustle. It's nice that you're trying to make it a thing, but it's not. That's not going to happen. Do you know what I mean?
There are so many people who just hadn't heard of it. Like, they didn't realize. I'm like, yeah, it's the team that worked on. I'm like, oh, like I had no idea that was like a thing. Like, I'll have to keep an eye out for it. And so, I don't know. I think that they're growing in popularity, but it is still kind of like this niche. So I'm interested to see how it will be kind of like broadly received by people. I don't know. Seems like it's like positive from critics and stuff, but
for sure.
No.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a real toss up between Rebirth and this. I think, I think it's going to be tough. Dragon Age might blow people away. We don't know. That's like, I think the last big, like, really heavy hitter
before like deadlines and stuff.
Yeah, before deadlines.
Indiana Jones is gonna miss it.
Indiana, I mean,
I don't know. It could be good. I still have faith in machine games. I mean, I don't give a shit about Indiana Jones.
I'm not saying it's going to be bad.
I'm not
saying it's going to be bad.
Besides have a couple of bad movies.
Does anyone think it's like looking like a Game of the Year contender? I don't know, man. Like, I think it's going to be a fun indie game where you punch Nazis. Like, sure, that's fine, whatever. But I don't really think of people thinking, that's you know what I mean? Like, but who knows? Like,
but what is the definition of an indie game?
That's a perfect point to wrap this segment.
Okay, God.
Thank you so much, Jess. It was great having you.
Yeah, never again. No,
Told you.
Yeah,
Told you.
All right, time for what we've been playing. Now, Ralph, you were out in the last episode where Jake talked about his experience going back to old Silent Hill, but I understand you've been playing it. How you finding it?
Yes, so I would have uploaded my video on the subject on the channel already, but I really like this video game. It's a very, very good video game. And Bloober Team definitely clap back, because everyone threw a lot at them.
Yep.
Fair enough, though. Like, because, I mean, look, I've actually never been fully on board the Bloober Team hate train, right? It gets a lot of flack. And, like, I've recognized they've made some missteps along the way, and a lot of their stuff has fallen short, but I've enjoyed, what I've played from them, despite the shortcomings. So I wasn't. But I did see those earlier trailers for Silent Hill. I was like, I don't know about this. This doesn't look quite right to me. Like, do these guys really get it? I think my main takeaway from Silent Hill Remake is that Bloober Team absolutely got the substantive elements of Silent Hill 2. That theme, like the vibe and the setting and the story and the themes behind that story and the characters and their motivations, like all of that. I would say, well, I don't know why this is controversial. I think that stuff is better here than it is in the original. Because back then, you couldn't see the details on their face.
Yeah, the performance is really elevated.
The performance is a whole other level. Like, James is so weird and goofy in the original, man. He's a brick. He is like, the whole thing, if you listened back to that original game, it sounds like a table read where actors read a script for the first time and they just have to kind of say the lines, but they don't know exactly what they mean. They don't know the context, right? So they're just delivering a line that's like, thanks, which is completely out of sync with how you should actually be saying that word in that moment, right? This fixes all that. It's in every aspect, the delivery of those lines is better, and the script is more nuanced with regards to how it ekes out information, and it's so much more believable. And again, the amount of detail that you can communicate through characters' faces is unbelievable, right? So I'm not sure why it would be at all controversial to suggest that the game does this stuff better than the original. But I have seen some people really bristle at that suggestion. They're like, no, the original performances were better. And I'm like, I don't understand that. Have you guys seen that? Does that make any sense to you?
It does make. I think there also comes a point where you latch onto a piece of media because you played it at a very specific time and it becomes...
No, absolutely.
But I think the thing about remakes, and we talked a little bit about this last time, but it's like, as long as they don't completely replace, Silent Hill 2 still exists, the original, and you can revisit that anytime if you want. So I don't know. It feels, I don't know. Maybe it's that part of like just latching onto something a little bit too hard.
I think so. I think that this is a very like sad, emotionally wrought story, and the original game couldn't communicate that with the same degree of subtlety that this one can, because the technology was different back then. That's not an indictment on the old on Team Silent and what they did, because what they did was obviously remarkable, but they were limited by not only the technology of the time, but also the contemporary game making techniques of the time. Like, how do you direct a voice actor in a booth to deliver a line, and how can you do facial animations in cutscenes, like CGI versus like in-game cutscenes, and how do you frame a shot like this? They were still figuring out a lot of that stuff back then, and we figured it out now. Like, we're talking 20 years later, we know how motion cap works, and we know how an actor should deliver a line if we want it to be believable. It should basically be like they do it on television and film, but they couldn't do that in video games because the art form just wasn't advanced enough to be able to do that consistently,
But they still created something even back then that has stood the test of time to be as beloved, and so that should also be completely celebrated.
Totally.
But it can also be celebrated in a way that it can be reinterpreted in ways that are more palatable to the modern the sensitivities of the modern gamer.
I don't agree with that part, see.
Wait, is it wait, no, I'm saying like something can be taken and then reinterpreted, like Shadow of the Colossus, for example. Like the example with changing things like control schemes.
Yes, but I think that term modern sensibilities has a lot of connotations to it that I don't think are applicable here.
Like what?
Right? Because I think, when people say modern sensibilities, I think a lot of the time it refers to, we have a contemporary society that's a little bit more prudish, and
I wasn't talking about anything like that. I was talking about like control schemes and people liking ray tracing, or
Sure.
Launching from Steam or something. I'm not talking about. I'm talking about the act of playing.
Yeah, well, for sure. No, I totally. Well, that part I absolutely agree with. But I do think, interestingly enough, that kind of like modern sensibilities question comes up when it comes to like Maria's outfit. Where it's
God,
like
no, I wasn't touching any of that shit.
Sure. But I mean, even then, I think that's an interesting example of this, because I think some people have said that Maria's outfit in this game is less revealing as a form of censorship, but I actually don't agree with that at all, because I feel like what they've really tried to do is like, how do we make this character just as sexy and as much of a temptress without necessarily having to show her midriff? Like, in what other ways can we build that character up without relying purely on her clothing, right? And that's why you've got her delivery and the way she kind of like talks and her eyes, like it's so much more subtle. So I think they're trying to go for exactly the same outcome, which is like, she is meant to represent temptation and she represents sex and she represents that. None of that has been dulled, but I think that they're trying to reach that objective in a more interesting way by saying, well, what if she was wearing a little bit more clothing, but she was suggestive in a variety of other ways that you need to watch more closely for. That's my take on that, right? Because overall, I don't think this game is pulling any punches with regards to like the adultness of the material.
I agree.
And again, I would say that, the interpretation of the story side of this is like perfect. Like I think they've absolutely crushed it. On the gameplay side of things, that's where I have some problems. Like, and I guess I've been talking a lot. So like Jake, how did you feel about like the combat side of this and like the bigger, like the exploration side of it, the fact that it's like twice as long? Like, how did you land on all that stuff?
So as I was playing through it, I was enjoying it, but once I got closer to the end, I kind of felt like a lot of it overstayed its welcome.
Yes, absolutely.
I think the combat has some good like raw feeling and emotion to it. I was like into it, invested into it. But after a while, it started to lose its luster a little bit. But it didn't bother me that much. What did was for me like hitting the prison section that I felt just went on a little bit too long because it had so many things it wanted me to do and solve. So like I like that they added puzzles, I like that they built on puzzles, but like every once in a while I was like, I was a little bit too much here, which is crazy to say. Like I think most of what they added is good, but a little bit here and there, pacing wise, threw some things off.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's crazy to say at all. Like I think it's a really big weakness of the game versus the original. I think it absolutely feels like it's too long. You know, by the time I got to the hotel at the end, I was like, oh man, there's like 4 stories here of locked doors and puzzles, and
it's a lot.
We're gonna do all this again. It's like I'd already done enough of that at that point, and the prison builds up to this really big emotional climax. No spoilers in this video, by the way. But there are some really big plot lines that are tied up at the end of the prison sequence, and it's so big, so emotional. And then at that point, I'm like, I'm ready to ride that to the conclusion. But at that point, the game's like, no, time to do some more puzzle solving. And you've got to do a few more hours of that at that point before you really lock everything down and like move into that final thing. So I think that definitely weakens it, relatively speaking. But I also am quite sympathetic to the fact that like Bloober Team probably needed to make it a longer game because the market really bristles at the idea of a $70 game that goes for 8 hours.
Yeah.
Not everyone does. And yeah, the Resident Evil games, well, Resident Evil 2 Remake specifically, did do that at a $60 price tag back then. But you can imagine that they kind of thought, well, we need to make this a bit bigger so that people feel like they're getting their value for money. And that was not a consideration back with the original. And so the original doesn't have those same sort of pacing issues. But for me, the biggest problem is that combat. Like, I agree with what you're saying in terms of like, there are too many mannequins hiding that you need to like, that try and jump scare you. And you're like, all right, we're doing more of these. Sure. But the bigger issue is that like, I don't feel the combat model is quite right for this game. Like it's too, James is too able-bodied. He's too relentless.
Too capable?
He's too capable.
The fact that you can kneecap an enemy and then run up and hit him with a bat.
That's not his style, man. Like James is just a broken ass dude. He should have like a fucking stamina bar that where he swings 3 times. He needs to take a break to like swing.
That would be interesting. Okay, I was going to ask what you would change. That's a good.
Yeah, like or like he can animation cancel. By the way, I don't know if you picked this up while you were playing.
You can smoke. You can really.
You should not. James should not be able to animation cancel. He should not be able to fake out and do all this shit. It's also canon. As well, like you also have iframes when you dodge. Like that's wild, man. Like you should not be able to dodge through an attack from a nurse by just timing perfectly a dodge like that. I think none of that has any place in this, and I think it's a really, where the story stuff, they got it. They nailed it. It's perfect. It's 10 out of 10. Whereas this, you're like, nah, this is not what I would have built. It's fun. Don't get me wrong. Like it's a capable combat model. And in another game, another survival horror game, I think this would be really good. But here it just feels like an ill fit, you know? And you look at like Resident Evil 4 combat and you're like, yes, Leon S. Kennedy is a badass motherfucker who's been like military trained and he's just like he's fit as a fiddle and off he goes. It makes sense that he can roundhouse kick zombies to the face. James is no, man, he's like a broken down alcoholic. He's just, this doesn't feel quite right, you know. So that stuff I struggle with, the expanded environments and the combat. But again, it's similar to the original. That's not what we really played Silent Hill for. Like we played it for that story and those characters and the setting, and to me, that is so beautifully delivered that I just really love playing through this. It was fantastic. All those complaints aside, they don't really matter to me that much. I'm so glad that they made this, and I'm so glad that they nailed that part of it so well, because you can hand this to someone and be like, dude, go and play this video game. It's different. It's special. And even in the modern era, Silent Hill 2 is still different and special. And I think it's also partly a commentary on the nature of AAA games and how unwilling they are to confront difficult ideas. You see a lot of this stuff in the indie space. There is no shortage of courage to address challenging, confronting topics. But you don't see it that much in AAA space. It's usually pretty safe, you know? And so I think Silent Hill 2 today is just as relevant and confronting as it was back then, in large part because it's so good, but also in large part because I don't think the industry has really tried to maintain that sort of maintain that nerve, I guess you should say. Like, yeah. I don't know if that makes sense.
I'm happy that was maintained in terms of like that story grit or like that story ickiness. Because one of the things I said in the last podcast was like how I miss the griminess of it, which came from the visual filter, playing on a crappy TV back in the day, but also like the marketing and like the original imagery. Like it just didn't have that grime, but I'm glad. But part of that is just the reason modern graphics, modern visuals. But I'm glad that like the feelings are still there from the presentation, the atmosphere, the retained music, the better sound design, but also again, like what you said, the story and stuff. That was really the most important thing.
They actually made some nice additions to the story as well, like new scenes that I think added some real value, that were really in keeping with what the story was trying to tell.
But just tripling in really a little bit more, just giving a little bit more to like Maria and stuff like that. It was good.
Totally. And that would have been really easy to fuck that shit up. Like you could have absolutely just done an extra scene that misunderstands that character or whatever. And so very deft touch, I think, when it comes to that stuff.
Smart choices and additions. And, I know with the gameplay, especially for you, like some of it didn't land, but like I liked seeing things added, like puzzles where like the moth puzzle for me was like, I remember it being, correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember in the original game, it was just kind of like a room you walked through. There were some moths in there and that's where you got a key. Now it's a whole interesting, weird little puzzle
thing where you gotta like count the number of things on the wings and whatever else.
My dumb ass was just counting the moths and not the things on the wings for so long. Like it was like a good, like just the right amount of challenge to it.
Yeah. No, I agree. I do think I actually like the puzzles as well. Like but again, it's just that overall pacing challenge. But look, I think people are going to look back on this very fondly. Like the discourse will wash through and we're like, well, was Silent Hill 2 Remake good? Hell yeah, it was. And I mean, the reviews right now say as much as well. It's like overwhelmingly positive on Steam.
The community, the Silent Hill community, which is, notoriously very fickle.
A lot of them apologizing to Bloober Team.
Yeah, a lot of people apologizing to Bloober Team. And so, and I think as well, like full credit to them because it's not just because Silent Hill 2 is good and they just traced over, Team Silent's homework or whatever, right? They're like, Bloober Team put their own stamp on it, and not everything that they did hits perfectly, but all of it hits well enough that this is a very competent remake, and some of it hits so well that you're like, damn, good job, guys. Like, that's incredible, They, in particular, they protected this story, and it's such an important story within video games for them to have been able to pass it on to a new generation of fans is so special,
Yeah.
Because like a lot of people say like, well, you just play the original. It's like, no, you can't, man. Like we can, because we're just nerds who like understand what that means to play that old game. But if I handed that to my normie brother who doesn't play video games, play the original Silent Hill 2, he's like, what the fuck is this? What are these controls? What is this perspective? Why does it look like this? Like, most people can't go back and play an old game like that. They're just going to nope out of it. But here, this is something that you can like give to someone and be like, hey, check this out. And they will stick with it because it's got all that modern finishing that they expect. And that allows so many more people to experience it. And I think it's awesome that it exists. So yeah, good job, Bloober Team, man.
Yeah.
Much respect.
Yeah.
Much respect.
Maybe this will be my first Silent Hill.
It's not the best one.
Yeah, like...
Is it not? Which
in
one?
In my opinion. No. I like 1 and 3.
1 and 3.
You've always been a 1 and 3 man.
Yeah.
Oh, Metal Gear 1 and 3?
Do you reckon they'll actually remake? Do you reckon they'll do other ones now? What's your prediction on that?
That's a good question. I think right now Konami is very much in an interesting spot where they're like testing the waters and throwing these things out there. So I think maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I think if they get good ROI on this and
Yeah.
they can and if they can reuse a lot of the assets that they would have made for this, because they would have put a huge amount of work into building that, I can see a business case for them going to do more of it, so long as this makes its money back. And I hope that it does, and I suspect that it will, because the word of mouth on it is just so good.
It's also such a weird year, and like so many things are moving out, and hopefully it's finding that kind of extra audience who might have been tied up in something else.
Yeah. It's a really special game. Look, just to anyone watching, if you haven't played Silent Hill 2 before, don't look anything up.
No.
Just go and play it if you can afford it, because it's just $70. It's not cheap. It's not on any like Game Pass or whatever. You've got to pay full price for it. But it's a very powerful, very affecting story that very few games have the courage to sort of tell it in that way. And so I really recommend checking it out. It's like, should you play Space Marine? Hell yeah, man, it's fucking cool and you'll love it and you'll have a good time and you'll kill heaps of aliens. But like Silent Hill 2, man, you're going to think about that for a long time to come. So even if it's outside your normal wheelhouse, you don't play these sorts of games, you don't play survival horror, maybe you think you're a bit too scared. By the way, it's actually not that scary. Like, it's scary, but it's not that kind. It's psychological horror rather than like lots of jump scares and grotesqueness. Like, it's not that scary. It's more just, I guess the point is, it's just I think everyone should experience Silent Hill 2. I really do. So please.
And experience it at night with headphones on, with the lights off, on presumably a good monitor or television. Because man, the use of darkness and stuff is so effective.
It's amazing. Like the prison yard, when you step into the prison yard, you're just like, damn.
And you're like, wait, am I outside?
That's right. Yeah. What is this? Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot.
Video games, man.
Yeah.
I was going to say.
Sometimes it'd be like that.
And now from Silent Hill 2 to Jake, what you've been playing. I can't think of like a natural segue for this one.
Smooth. Yeah, real smooth. What I've been playing other than Silent Hill and Metaphor, and also replaying a little bit of Uncharted 2 randomly.
Happy anniversary.
Nice choice.
Yeah, 15th anniversary. So I was like, fuck it.
Really?
I played through the intro with him like hanging off the train, did that intro, and I was like, Tom Holland could never, dude. No fucking way, man.
Respect.
Movies could never. Anyway, I played a little bit over the weekend. I fired it up because I got a review code. I said, hell, why not? Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. I don't have nostalgia for these specific types of Dragon Ball games, but as a kid, loved Dragon Ball Z, loved Dragon Ball, was all in on that. And this is a fun arena brawler. It's all about being OP and just stuff not being balanced and crazy and just punching enemies and having them fly through a building and watching that building collapse, or like, exploding a mountain. And it is another Dragon Ball game. That's the best I can say. They've made so many at this point, and so many of them are retellings of like, okay, here's Raditz, okay, here's Vegeta, okay, here's Frieza, here's Cell, like, and just doing those whole saga things. Like, we've seen that all told so many times. And the game lets you play through these characters' sagas and experience them, and it's kind of all just told in like broken up cutscenes and static screenshots and stuff like that. So it's not really that exciting. What is exciting is that you get little variations on things. Like, you can choose to you can divert a little bit and like choose something that didn't happen in the show, and then you get a different fight. So there's little stuff like that. But I think at this point with the Dragon Ball games, so many of them have done through this whole retelling the stories, retelling the battles, that to jump into this one that had a lot of excitement around it in terms of like player nostalgic, like, yeah, they're bringing back like Budokai Tenkaichi, this is great. And then it's just kind of like fighting, and then you get a static cutscene and some voiceover, and that's it. It's a little anticlimactic, but when you're actually playing, it's cool. It feels old school. It's a little craptastic. Enemies can just spam you with the same attack over and over and over again. And because like they say it every time they do the attack, and it's just like madness, but it's cool. I don't know. It's like there's so much like fan stuff there. You can be like 17 different types of Gokus. Yeah. You can unlock all of them. You can have all these different, they have future spin-off Gohan where everybody dies and he has like one arm and a cool scar. Like you can play as that Gohan, and like that's like so cool. It's so specific.
Is it just a skin, by the way? Is it like they have different moves when they have these?
Some of them have different moves. Yeah, it's mostly their special abilities. But it's cool because like you can fuck around. Like you can create your own scenarios and mess around a little bit. You can just match up characters so unfairly against other characters. Like I played as Brawly, like just destroying Yajirobe, like just or like throwing Master Roshi through a building. Like it's kind of fun for stuff like that. It doesn't seem like it has the like couch play stuff that you'd want from like the old school versions. As much. You can really only play in like one arena. That's a little boring. But yeah, I don't know. There was a lot of hype around this one, and I know I am not the target audience because again, I don't have a lot of nostalgia for specifically Budokai Tenkaichi, this style of games. But yeah, so I don't know. I don't like wholeheartedly recommend it, but
sure. It sold 3 million copies in 24 hours.
Yeah, there was a lot of demand for
That's
this.
compared to like Metaphor, ReFantazio, for example, which is 1 million in 24 hours, right?
Yeah.
So, but obviously DBZ is like huge and it's got this massive.
There was a lot of people waiting for another one of this style of game specifically. And then have all like a staggering amount of characters represented in it. So like, yes, even though it's flawed and like I didn't really like playing through the character stories or anything like that, like it is a throwback game. And I think it is like pretty successful in that. I think I've seen some players come to me like kind of expecting more or expecting new. And they're kind of just like having simple fun with this. They didn't reinvent the wheel. I'm wondering at this point where Dragon Ball games go next, right? Think about it. We have a real, actual, genuine, good fighter in Dragon Ball Fighters or Fighter Z or whatever you want to call it. They have 2 like online games with Xenoverse. They have the open world adventure play as Goku in Kakarot. They have probably a bunch of mobile games. They have this now. So like what else do they do? How do they keep like, pulling from that well? They wanna. I mean, they've milked the hell out of this shit. So
I suspect they'll just keep re-releasing some similar stuff, telling the same sagas over and over again, because if you can sell 3 million copies in 24 hours,
true.
Like,
still
do
working.
You know what I mean?
Still working.
It's still working, man. It's still working.
Man,
did you get stuck on that? Yeah, I was never a DBZ guy. Hence my question I'm about to ask now. Did you get stuck on this giant monkey boss or whatever that everyone gets stuck on?
Yeah.
Who's this monkey boss?
This is Vegeta. So Vegeta is a Saiyan who he has a monkey tail. And when
is that what that means?
So Saiyans are aliens that are like cool anime badass guys, but they just happen to have monkey tails. And then sometimes they can turn into giant monkeys.
All right.
Yeah. There's more to it. Apparently, and like it's so fuzzy for me, man.
Apparently, everyone got super stuck on this guy. Like he was just total
spams
bullshit.
The shit out of attacks, and like if you lower the difficulty, he still does it. It's very unfair. Like it feels kind of busted. And like
because even
people
like
don't care. People kind of like it. I don't know.
Even the official Twitter handle was like joking that you should like you should like lower the difficulty or whatever.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's wild. It's stuff like that feels kind of like my friend texted me and he was like, "Is this cool? I remember the old ones." And I'm like, "It's still craptastic if you remember like the old ones, like for lack of a better phrase." But where it's good is like the visual effects, and you combo an enemy and punch them through a mountain, and then you can dart towards them and fly towards them and then continue to combo them, and you're like doing it over water, you're doing it in the sky, like the effects are there. When you trigger an attack, the camera cinematically spins around, it shows the character, and it ends up like these Dragon Ball games now at this point are more stylish than the original show. Like in terms of framing the action and highlighting the action, like it's on like a totally different level. It's very cool. That's cool. Yeah, but fuck that monkey. That monkey boss was awful. I didn't like that at all. That was not fun.
Like the Sekiro monkey.
Yeah. With his head.
The little surprise.
He comes back.
That was perfect.
That
Incredible.
asshole.
Legendary.
God.
Yeah, that's my game though.
Sure. How about you, Liz? What have you been playing?
I played Phoenix Springs. which was
I'm actually really interested to hear about this.
I
Tell
don't know
me
anything about this.
So Phoenix Springs, I will probably have shown you it at one point because the aesthetic of it is really cool. It is like this hand-drawn, really stark color palette of this green, this yellow, and then reds, and then the rest is just like use of negative space, basically. It's a really interesting game. It is a point-and-click adventure game. You play as a tech journalist in this kind of cyberpunky, dystopian-ish future that doesn't go too hard on like the technology stuff. You just know that it is a miserable, I assume, near future. It doesn't really go into too many details about that kind of thing. And you are looking for your brother, who is your younger brother, who later on in his life goes back to university and becomes a very renowned bioethicist. And it is a professor of bioethics. Basically the conceit is like, in terms of the actual gameplay, as a point-and-click adventure, you don't have an inventory of things. You have a inventory of concepts and words in your mind. And so when you are talking to characters, and there's not actually that really, like as in like characters or anything meaningful to say, I should say. You're just basically like clicking and dragging words and concepts. So if, there's this kid and you go, okay, have you seen Leo Dormer, my brother? Have you seen The Street? And so then you kind of muddle your way through. And the thing that I think the game really excels at is I think it has an incredible sense of wonder and weirdness. I've seen a lot of people compare it to things like a David Lynch, where you go to a place and there are just people who speak kind of nonsensically at you. And I think it does a really good job of presenting these ideas and concepts in a way that they are very intriguing, and I am desperately wanting to know more, but it's not necessarily going to answer all those questions for you. The one thing I will say that is the absolute best thing, the voice actor who plays Iris, the character that you play as, unbelievable.
Really?
She is so good. She has this really wonderful, rich voice. And there are things where you're sometimes you're throwing ideas at the wall, and I will come to this in a second, where you are trying to solve these puzzles and you're trying to combine various things. And the way that she just kind of goes, I don't think so. No, why would I do that? Like there are so many of these essentially barks where she's basically telling you that you're a fucking idiot. But she delivers it in such a beautiful way. And it's this self-narration where it's, this is where I find him. This is where I find my brother, that kind of thing. So I will say that I think the game is the strongest in its first half.
Okay.
When you get to Phoenix...
How long is that first half?
So it's all in, I think I spent about 4 hours with the game. So I think the first hour is really tight. I think it's really, really good, that first hour. I think once you hit like the kind of hour to second hour, I was like, okay. And then it kind of falls in love with its own cleverness a little bit, I think, when it comes to you actually getting to Phoenix Springs, because some of the puzzle solutions are just very, very esoteric, and I don't think it does the best job in some puzzles of like kind of pointing you towards the right answer. And there are also some instances where the art style is wonderful. It's beautiful. It's one of the most striking games I think I've ever seen. However, there are sometimes that I just don't know that I can interact with something. It fits into the background a little too well. And so sometimes when you're kind of like knocking your head against the wall because you're a bit stuck, it can get a bit frustrating, and kind of all of the I don't know. I think also the dev maybe knows it, because there's very minimal interface. But when you pause the game, there's a link to the walkthrough in the pause menu.
Wow.
What do you mean? What? Like what walkthrough? Where's the walkthrough?
Hosted on their official website. Like they just have the walkthrough. And it's not,
How weird.
It's not like very in depth. It's basically like click this with this and so I guess it's a way to get you to move forward if you are stuck. And actually I didn't mind it, but I did just feel that like the first hour, I think the puzzles are a lot more, they just make a lot more sense to me logically. And I guess if I wanted to be really charitable, I think because of the dreamy, nonsensical way that the story touches on some concepts. Like, I guess you could say that it's fitting that the puzzles don't necessarily follow the same logic. Like, you could interpret it that way. As a player, I was definitely getting to points where it became frustrating for me, and I did have to rely on that walkthrough. And maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm just not smart. But I think overall, it's a cool game. I'm really glad that I played it. I think there's a lot to really like about it. I just wish that it had held up that momentum from the first hour, because like that first hour was also the Steam Next Fest demo, I think, from ages ago. Like, I played it as a demo. How
did it sort of get on? Why did you decide to play it? What made you go, this is for me?
I saw it at Day of the Devs in, I think it was the Summer Game Fest version. And again, immediately was that art style. It was so striking to me.
Yeah.
And then just, I'm a sucker for a little bit of futurism. I'm a sucker for just a cool story. And like, she's looking for your brother. What's happened to him? That's an immediate mystery that I want to get to the bottom of. And so, I played the demo and I really, really enjoyed it. And so this one I'm a little more mixed on in terms of the overall execution. But yeah, wow. That art style it's really stunning. So
I have seen it. It looks lovely.
Yeah.
But I was interested in how well it played. And
I mean, for 4 hours.
It doesn't wear its welcome too much, I suppose, when it's 4 hours long.
Yeah, 4 hours is good. How much is it? Is it like...
I think it's $20.
Cool.
But yeah, there's some really interesting topics and stuff. I don't want to like spoil anything, but there's some really fun things that it delves into. So that's what I've been playing.
Cool.
And Ralph, you've been back.
I also been playing some Diablo.
I was gonna say the Diablo grind.
That's what they used to call me in high school.
Vessel of Hatred campaign fucking sucks. It's so bad.
No, really?
Man. Fucking sucks. I'm so stunned. Because I read all these positive reviews and I'm like, yeah, man, let's go. Like, I'm excited. You know, it's so bad. I don't understand these reviews at all. I'm a fan of this game, by the way. Can I be clear? I've been a fan. Like, I actually liked the original.
Yeah. Same.
I was quite impressed by most of its aspects.
Yeah.
Like, not like, like there were definitely some issues with regards to endgame and build craft and, you know, all sorts of stuff, sure. But I looked at the totality of that package and I'm like, all right, I think Blizzard have done net a good job here, which, by the way, is a controversial opinion in the Diablo community. Most people hated the launch date of Diablo 4, like Diablo fans. Fair enough. I actually totally get it. But like, Vessel of Hatred is just so much less than what I would have expected from this team, given how fantastic a job they have done updating this game post-launch. The game has had substantial improvements and additions in almost every aspect since its initial launch. It's now got a far more fleshed out endgame. Its gear system has been completely reworked. There are so many more activities that you can do, like at various points. Classes have been sort of rebalanced a little bit, redesigned, very subtly, but whatever. But net, it's a really positive story. The amount of work that Blizzard have put into that game over 12 months is frankly staggering. When you actually look at how fast live service games typically take to update, they're moving so much faster, right? So then Vessel of Hatred comes along, and again, all these reviews are really positive, and all that, but this campaign is so bad. Like, you're just being sent from icon to icon, listening to some inane cutscene chatter that's just really off tone, and the new environment that you're in just feels indistinguishable from the rest of the map because their approach to environment design, it's too deep, like too much to say. I don't want to get too bogged down in detail in this podcast, but like, the environment is forgettable, the story is bad. And none of the sequences that you go through feel impactful. And then it all just concludes in some kind of like cliffhanger thing because it wants to keep the story going because it's a live service game and that's how they want to do it. I personally don't have too much of a problem with the intention of wanting to always provide, you know, the incentive to keep playing. But you got to give us some finality. You got to give us some conclusion that really rings out. And it just doesn't do that, you know. I think as well, even thematically, like this new Spiritborn class that they've added, it's fun, but I just don't think it feels distinct enough. And you've got something like the Druid, which is already doing a lot of animal stuff, and you had the Monk in Diablo 3, which was doing quick dashy stuff, martial artsy stuff. This just feels like a kind of, let's smush those together and see what happens. And it doesn't quite work, I don't think. So I am still really enjoying this video game because I like Diablo 4. And I think that if you look at all parts of the game, that it's really good. And I would also say that I haven't started digging into some of the new endgame systems. Like there's a new, almost like not a raid is not the quite word, but they've got these dungeons that are much more elaborate and they have puzzles in them. I haven't done any of those yet. I haven't started getting into the really deep endgame grind. So there are parts of it that I haven't yet experienced. But if I'm just talking the campaign, it's a phenomenally disappointing campaign and I'm super bummed out about it. And I don't understand how it got the scores that it got. I think those scores were reviewing Diablo 4 as a package, which I get that. It does deserve 85s and 90s. Maybe not 90, but it does deserve those 85s. But the campaign itself, man, no, I don't think you should go out of your way to experience this campaign. I think it is a really, really disappointing time. So, has anyone else played it yet, by the way? Is this just me?
No, I fell off Diablo 4, pretty quickly. I never have been a Diablo player.
Yeah, they're cool.
But I remember I did interview them, I think, last year about it. But maybe that's, I think.
I actually interviewed the team as well at Gamescom, and everything I said still stands in terms of, because my questioning with them was very much like, how did you update this game as much as you have in the time that you have? Honestly, I've never seen a live service loot-driven game receive such this amount of substantial overhaul in that span of time. It's crazy what they've done, right? But I just think that they have not been able to apply that same approach to their expansion design, and as a result it's just a real bummer. And I think as well, actual Diablo players kind of echo the sentiment. They're pretty happy with the game, but they're also really bummed out with that campaign experience, which it's hard to find a kind word for that on the Diablo subreddit, for example. Most people just thought it sucked. So but I'm still playing through it now. I do plan to review it when I get to the end game and play through it all. But I would say Diablo 4 is a good game, but I would also say I played through some Path of Exile 2. I played through it earlier this year, and I was much more impressed with what Path of Exile 2 was shooting for at this point, for a variety of reasons that I won't get into now because it takes too long. But I'm really should you buy Diablo 4 right now? I'd be like, maybe wait until November 15th, because that's when Path of Exile 2 comes out, and that's going to be free to play, and you can decide for yourself at that point where you want to put your money or time or whatever, because I think Path of Exile 2 is looking really, really spectacular, and it might be worth holding off for that one if you're thinking about stepping into an ARPG. That's my take.
Interesting.
So
yeah. No, well, I'm sad for you because you were so excited for that.
I actually was really pumped to come back to that, and I kind of put aside metaphor for a while because I'm like, I really want to get into it, and I played it straight after I finished Silent Hill, and I really like Silent Hill. I'm like, this is great, man. October rules, man. Give me all the cool games.
Let's go.
Yeah, let's go. And also I would say I'm not playing Destiny right now. Diablo has kind of replaced Destiny for me at the moment, and so I really wanted this to hit hard and be like, yeah, hell yeah, man. But I'm getting back on that same disappointment train that Bungie's been keeping me on for a while. I'm just switching from, I'm just a different provider now, gone from Bungie to Blizzard. So, but no, I'm looking forward to grinding gear games and seeing what they do with Path of Exile 2.
Well,
yeah, that's all I got.
Those are the games. What have you guys been? What have we been doing that isn't video games? Jake, what have you been?
Oh man, so I've been watching. Every October, my wife and I put together a list of horror movies, spooky movies, Halloween movies, and we watch them all.
Oh, do you do one a night, or how do you?
We try to do one a night. Yeah, that always ends up being kind of a daunting task, but we do a mix of same thing with Christmas movies, where it's right, you have those couple you watch every year. So we have a list with some of the ones we watch every year. It's the pumpkin Charlie Brown or whatever, that one.
Great Pumpkin Charlie
Sleepy Brown. Hollow.
Oh, I saw you with the Blu-ray.
Oh, I just got the Steelbook. Yeah, I pre-ordered the Sleepy Hollow 4K Blu-ray a year ago, and it finally showed up just in time.
Wow.
Yeah, so this year, just real quick, a couple of things I watched. Longlegs, really cool.
Yeah.
Very good. I like how it kind of reminds, especially the first half, it reminded me of like Silence of the Lambs in terms of just that like dreary detective thing, that FBI thing. That was really cool. Also, I know this podcast is becoming like famous for like our bizarre movie takes, but I watched The Birds for the first time since I was like a kid.
Hitchcock?
Okay.
Yeah, Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds. It's so good, and I think Psycho is overrated, and I think The Birds is better, and The Birds should be considered that like iconic horror classic, if you ask me. Some of the visual effects actually still hold up, with just like people being swarmed with birds in a room. It looks incredible. Yeah, some of the imagery in that movie is so stark and striking that like I remember being creeped out about it as a kid, and it holds up today, which is really impressive. It has the Alfred Hitchcock thing. I feel like he's done in a couple movies like Psycho, where the first half is like, oh, here's a peculiar woman. What's this peculiar woman doing? She's mysterious and sexy. What's going on here? And then it just gets crazy, and it turns into like a scary movie. So like, but like pacing wise, I thought it was like, I think it flows better than Psycho. I don't know. I really enjoyed it. Also I watched Van Helsing. The Hugh Jackman movie.
Oh, the Hugh Jackman one.
I
don't think I've ever seen that. I can't remember if I've seen it. I don't think I have.
It's always on like UK TV, like ITV1 or something at 10 p.m. I don't think I've
watched
seen
it
in forever.
like when it came out, and I was like, that was kind of cool, but like shitty, whatever. Watched it again, and now it feels like a breath of fresh air compared to like everything else out now. Like it's so dumb and bad and not a good idea, but it's like so earnest about it. It's just going for it. And it's directed by Stephen Sommers, who directed The Mummy. So it's got that same feel. Okay. Not as good.
No.
But just like that swashbuckling silliness and like trying to use special effects and push things a little bit. It's just such a Hollywood cocaine brain CEO idea of a movie where it's like, what if Van Helsing from Bram Stoker's Dracula was actually hot and basically Blade? Let's do that. And then let's have him travel the globe and fight Dracula, who is also working to like use Frankenstein to make like a new like vampire baby, and the Wolfman shows up, and also Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Like it's ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. It's not great, but it's got like really interesting moments and like cool set design, like, and Kate Beckinsale's in it. So there's that.
Damn.
There's that.
Maybe I'll watch that this Halloween.
It's on Netflix, and it is a trip. It is just a mess. It's cool.
Yeah, it kind of. I always conflate it with League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
It's basically the same thing.
Yeah,
it's basically the same. It's so funny how close it is. It just has Hugh Jackman in it. Back when he was in X-Men, and then executives were like, "What do we do with this guy? What else do we do?"
Yeah. He got jacked up for this role. Let's see what else. What else can we make him sexy in? Let's put him in.
Little did they know. He just wants to sing and dance, man. That's all he wants to do.
He really does, man. That's all he's ever wanted. God bless him.
Yeah.
I finally watched Civil War for the first time.
Oh, me too.
Captain America?
Oh, no. The other one, the A24 one.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Very different.
I've seen Civil War, Captain America many times.
Incredible.
But
I'm going to do a little Google, so I don't know what you're talking about.
So, yeah, it's that one about, like, what if America fought itself with what's her name? Kirsten Dunst.
Oh, the Alex Garland one.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So
does not have a good Google ratings review.
No, it's a really disappointing film, I think. I don't know, like, if anyone you've seen it, Jake?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how you feel about it, but like, it basically tells a story of like, what if America fought itself? And you're like, okay, what are they fighting about?
We're not gonna tell you.
Oh my god!
You know,
are you joking?
like that's literally it. Like, and
I'll never tell.
It's not like, but it also has some kind of like really weak sort of gesturing. Like at the beginning, like what's his name? The president.
It's Ron. It's not Ron Burgundy. What's his name?
No.
Parks and Rec
Offerman?
guy.
Nick Offerman.
Offerman, yes, it's Offerman. And he says, like, he kind of delivers these lines like, you know, we're about to have a great victory. Some people have said it's the greatest victory in human history. Like, it's meant to sort of like give this kind of Trumpian vibe, but then it doesn't commit to that at all throughout the rest of the movie or explain anything. And I'm not saying that I wanted the movie to be like, hey, let's make it a red versus blue thing and let's like really dig into the politics of like, you know, partisanship. I'm just saying, like, you got to talk about something. You got to, like, the idea of like, what if the American military fought itself? It's not particularly interesting. And then there's also like the idea of the press trying to cover what that would be like without necessarily talking about the role of the press, other than like, it's your job to point the camera at the bad thing and keep doing that. Like, it just, the whole thing is really weak. You could have told a really interesting story that actually does explore something to do with, like, you know, how divided America is. And, you know, it would be hard to do that without necessarily pissing off one half of the population or the other. But it's still an idea that's interesting to pursue. Whereas this movie just kind of says, well, let's not do any of that. And let's just make a movie about bad war crimes happening on American soil. And that's it, you know? So a really well-made film in terms of like how it's shot, and some of its sequences are really cool and whatever. But afterwards you walk out of it just feeling like, fuck, that was disappointing, man. Like, really emotionally unsatisfied by it. So I don't know how you felt, Jake.
Yeah, I'm a little mixed on it. I like the ideas of it more than I think the execution. I think I like that it was small. I like that it, you know, it didn't go balls to the wall. And I think that was a lot of, you know, mainstream audience disappointment. But I think with there not being enough reason behind things, I get from a storytelling mechanic, like, you can do that. You can try to do that and be like, no, we're not going to talk about why the violence. We're just going to tell a story within the violence. But I think it just didn't quite land. I also like the idea of a story like this just focusing on a war photographer, a war journalist. And there were moments with Kirsten Dunst specifically. I thought she did a good job, and like her in the hotel room, like sitting in the bathroom, like just like thinking about the horrific shit she saw that day. I thought that was really cool. And little moments like of them traveling and, you know, encountering a gas station in a small town, or encountering a couple of weirdos, or getting to a city and staying in a hotel, and it's like everything's normal, but they just like miles down the road there are explosions going on, but like it's in America. It's interesting. It just, once I finished it, I didn't really think about it again. And I think with a movie that made choices like that and tried to like do things, and the war journalists and America and Civil War, like, I don't know, I think it should have had a little bit more of a lasting effect.
Yeah, I mean, I think like violence in video games is meaningless because it is actually meaningless. We don't actually have to contend with why a lot of violence occurs. And so it's just kind of fun and a bit silly, you know what I mean? And I think this movie is also guilty of exactly the same thing. You're seeing these horrific acts, but unless you know why these horrific acts are occurring, you don't know if what you're seeing is heroic sacrifice or like mildless, indiscriminate carnage. Like, you need that context to be able to interpret what that violence is. You know, in the same way we can contextualize it in video games as being silly nonsense most of the time. Whereas here, we have no ability to contextualize it. So I feel like it all just seemed like silly nonsense. Like, all the scenes that played out just seemed like explosions and blood, and it's like, okay,
or little bits of shock value for not really much effect other than brief hit of your stomach, like nothing really.
So I do feel it was it really did remind me of a video game in some aspects, in the sense that it desensitized you to violence, not because it threw so much at you, but because it refused to contextualize what that violence was in service of, and so therefore it all just becomes meaningless, you know.
So I really like Alex Garland. I think this is just like my least favorite from him, definitely.
I haven't seen Men either, but I think that one was also pretty divisive, right?
Yeah, that was for that, for me, like I'm at this point, I just go on like what I can like remember from some movies.
Was it like
the visuals were incredible in that movie?
The kid with the face.
Yeah.
Yeah, the kid with the face. That's all I know from my friends talking about it. But yeah,
So
but I loved
in
Devs.
conclusion, what is the conclusion? Watch Marvel's Civil War, or better yet,
exactly right.
Better yet, read a fucking book. Read the comic book.
Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah.
I watched a movie that absolutely rocked. Have you guys seen The Substance?
No, but I want to.
No, but everyone's talking about it. Okay, first of all, I've heard that it's really gross. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay, but like, is it like so gross that you need to like turn away from the screen kind of gross? Like, is it that level of gross?
Sometimes.
Okay. I really struggle with that, to be honest with you. Like, I'm actually not. I'm not scared of what. I'm not worried about scary stuff, but like gross stuff, I'm like, I can't. Like, I really struggle.
Some really good body horror.
I love body horror.
See,
And there's some of it there, it's like right, this far away from the screen, and
I reckon I would struggle way too much. Oh man. So what is the deal with it though? Like, what's the premise?
So the premise is basically there is a serum that can solve all of your issues. And so I want to say, coming into this movie as a 38-year-old woman who has been front of camera for many years in my career, this was wild to watch because everyone in my row, everyone who I was with, who was in their 30s, loved this movie. The 20-something-year-old girls next to me absolutely hated it.
But why?
Basically, follows Demi Moore's character, who has been this beloved on-screen icon. She has an Oscar, so many awards. She has this TV show where she basically runs an aerobics exercise class. But she realizes through this Harvey Weinstein-ass character, who's literally called Harvey, played by Dennis Quaid, that she's on her way out, she's aged out, and, it's all over. Everything that she's ever worked for has just been taken away purely because she is aging. And so she discovers this thing called the substance, which basically creates the best version of you. The best version of Demi Moore's character, who's Elizabeth Sparkle, I think, is played by Margaret Qualley and just goes by Sue. But it is this kind of mix of Jekyll and Hyde, where they are the same person, but in two different bodies, and there are very strict rules, and there is obviously some give and take. So while Demi Moore's character is just, still aging out, depressed, not leaving the house, Margaret Qualley's character is living large. Like, she is getting the best the world is throwing at her purely because she is youthful and beautiful. And it is such an incredible commentary on how we as a society, particularly in the West, treat youth. There's a commentary on women growing older. And it is the most fucked up body horror I have seen in so long. It is wickedly funny. It is gross. The woman next to me, there is one scene towards the end that is on Twitter, so do not look it up. Do not look it up. She was just applauding because it's it is. And by the end, I was just laughing. It was one of those just ridiculous things that I was watching and just kept escalating. It was just awesome. I loved it. And yeah, it's really good. I think the thing is that I've already seen really high quality rips of clips and stuff that people are putting on Twitter. So maybe it's coming to VOD soon. I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed watching it in a theater with a bunch of people. Oh yeah, dude, like Joker 2 is gonna be on VOD, I think, end of this month.
Oh man, that's bad. I haven't even bothered to go see that. No. Like I just heard so many bad things. But I'm actually really intrigued to see to see it for myself. But I've not heard any good commentary from anywhere really. Like not even whatever. Like it just everyone is just dunking on this movie. So you didn't see it, did you, Jake?
No.
No, okay, right. Cool. Yeah, but the substance, maybe I'll try and grit my teeth and bear it and get through, because that does sound like a really cool premise.
Right up my alley.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. So yeah, good call. Good call.
So that was another episode of the Frames Per Second podcast.
We did it.
We did it. We done it.
Sure did.
Thank you everyone for listening and watching. If you would like to rate us, we are on all your podcast services. We do really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for those. They're nice. I read them.
Yeah, they make me feel warm.
No, they
and
are very nice.
fuzzy
Thank
inside.
you.
Mostly.
Mostly.
Yeah.
Like 99%. Very, very nice. We also have a Substack where you can get a recap of everything that we talk about in the show. I put it together. It usually comes out the weekend where the episode comes up. We also have an email address, like I mentioned, contact@framespersecond.com if you have burning questions for us. Sometimes people email us things and they're like, don't want this read out on the show, but you know that you mentioned this specific thing. So if you have questions like those, we'll typically reply. Like the person who asked me about the under the desk treadmill. I hope you find a nice one that you enjoy.
Yep.
But anyway, we'll be back again in a couple of weeks. Ralph, where can people find you?
Right here, baby. Right here, right now.
Yeah.
All the YouTube places, because there's only one place. It's YouTube and Threads. I'm on Threads quite a bit.
Yeah, dude.
And you know that's my go-to place. And I do respond. So if you want to come say hi, please thread me, baby.
That's right. You
That
heard it
sounds
here
terrible.
now. Get them.
Go get him.
That's where you can go
right.
get skill up.
Correct.
I'm also
ready
on
for that, man.
Threads, but I don't know. Like I don't know what my Threads like. I feel like my Threads posting is way more esoteric than any other
You're
social
going
network.
viral for
That's
like
what's
iPhone
nice
tips.
about it.
Yeah, I don't know. I went viral for an iPhone tip.
Yeah.
I had people DM me on Twitter because they saw that through their Instagram. It was weird.
No
anyway,
way. Cool.
yeah, don't follow me for iPhone tips. Follow me for pictures of my cats. They're staring.
Oh
at me.
yeah, I
They
do get
don't-
that a lot. So I was gonna say follow me on Instagram. I like Instagram, and I want to just use Instagram. It's fun. It's nice. I like that platform a lot. So Instagram.com/Jake Baldino. Thank you. I'm going to be there more than Twitter. But yeah, the Instagram app does show you threads to try and get you to like
Yeah,
go
crossover.
to threads.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's like engagement bait bullshit. Like it's just not
Yeah.
good posts. Then every once in a while it's like, look at what Lucy's doing. Like it'll
Lucy's
literally be like,
posting a
did you see
picture
what
of her
Lucy
cat?"
said yesterday? And I'm like, who is this lady? Get her off my feed.
It's me. Anyway, so that's where you can find us. We'll see you again in a couple weeks. Jake?
Until next time, tie your shoes and go to bed. And you know what? No, I was going to try and say something else, but you can't add to it.
Don't mess with the catchphrase, man. Don't mess with
Yeah,
perfection.
cut.
Yeah, go
We're
on.
going. Bye.
Bye.